The cabin hummed with engine noise and the rush of air against the fuselage. I pressed my forehead against the vibrating window, watching the clouds. After 6 months of unemployment, I had spent my last savings on a seat aboard this Learjet 75 Skydome Express. Only 6 of the 8 seats were occupied, and the engine drone served as the soundtrack to my anxiety. A final, desperate gamble. Former client deputy director Zhang had rasped over the phone. "Yin Fan, trust me. The Jakarta Plantation Digitization Project is back on the table. Come present your proposal in person. This is our only shot." Zhang was struggling, and I had sold my gaming gear to afford this ticket. At 28, a former IT project manager reduced to selling virtual assets for travel money was humiliating. Theoretical survivalist, I muttered at my reflection. My reflection showed a pale, tired face. My colleagues had dubbed me that because my hard drive was packed with Man vs. Wild, Ed Stafford's First Man Out, Green Hell Guides, and the U.S. Army and SAS survival handbooks. I knew how to make aspirin from tree bark, though I'd never touched a real tree. It started after my first sleepless night of unemployment. The panic of losing control over my life was suffocating. Watching survival videos, where people regained control through knowledge and willpower, strangely calmed my frayed nerves. It was a psychological compensation. When my real-life projects and relationships crumbled, I at least knew how to survive in the wilderness, theoretically. Knowledge is power, I'd joke, though it felt hollow. Those were just pixels and text. The plane jolted slightly. My professional instinct kicked in, scanning the cabin and tagging the passengers. Front left, by the window, cold female CEO. Her hair was pulled back, revealing a pale, sharp profile. She wore a crisp, cream-colored suit and worked on a tablet with expensive precision. She radiated a do-not-disturb aura. Beside her, humanoid weapon, female. A silver-streaked ponytail and pale skin contrasted with her tactical vest, revealing lean, cheetah-like muscle. She scanned the cabin constantly. I had heard her tell the CEO, "President Shun, the window seat is safer." A bodyguard. Across the aisle, cute JK girl. A round-faced girl in a gray JK uniform, bobbing her head to music. She radiated pure, sheltered innocence. A gentle voice came from the front. I glanced at the flight attendant. She was leaning toward the bodyguard, her uniform perfectly tailored. "Ms. Tang, your special meal is ready. Call me if you need anything." So, the bodyguard was Ms. Tang. I mentally noted her excellent service. On the other side, a passenger I'd barely noticed, socially anxious ghost. A figure buried in a deep gray hoodie, hiding their face. They remained motionless, a shadow wanting to be left alone. 6 people, 6 worlds. I shook off my poetic musings. I needed to focus on the Jakarta project, not character studies. Outside, the clouds darkened rapidly. The plane's attitude and engine pitch shifted. A low-frequency vibration rattled the cabin, like heavy objects striking the frame. Bearing failure? No, the frequency is different. I searched my mental database of aviation documentaries. The floor trembled, as if the plane's balance had been disrupted. I sat up, eyes locked on the window. The sky turned ink black, with deep, rolling clouds illuminated by blinding, harsh sunlight. The cloud tops were anvil-shaped, a massive, iron-like cap expanding at an alarming rate. The engine roar grew ragged, like a struggling old car. Anvil clouds, piercing the troposphere. My mind raced. The storm's energy was terrifying. I watched the clouds. They were rotating. A spiral structure. Supercell, I realized, cursing my own knowledge. "This is your captain," the intercom crackled. "We're entering unstable air. Please fasten your seatbelts." President Shun frowned at her tablet. The JK girl pulled off her headphones, confused. Ms. Tang sat rigid, hand hovering near her employer. The flight attendant braced herself, listening intently to her headset. Only the hoodie-clad passenger remained still, either dead asleep or utterly resigned. I tightened my seatbelt. My internal search engine fired. Moderate turbulence. Keep back straight. Avoid rigid limbs. Check life, vest location. I felt for the orange survival kit under my seat. I didn't pull it out. It would only hinder me if things went south. The black clouds swallowed the last of the light. Lightning flashed, not branched, but massive, silent blue-white halos. I even saw glowing orbs rolling between the clouds. Ball lightning. My skin crawled. The plane plummeted. A sickening weightlessness, like a snapped elevator cable. I was thrown against my belt, my stomach churning. The JK girl screamed. "Stay calm," the captain shouted, his voice strained. Microburst. "We are struggling to maintain control." Microburst. The aviation world's death sneeze. A lethal, sudden downdraft. Then came the hail. 2-centimeter ice balls hammered the fuselage like thousands of hammers. The windows began to spiderweb with cracks. Pressure plummeted. My ears screamed in pain. President Shin's cold mask shattered. The JK girl was sobbing. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. They dangled, swaying violently. President Shin scrambled for hers. The JK girl struggled, blinded by tears. The engine sound changed. A series of bangs erupted, like firecrackers in a metal bin. The plane shook violently. I saw a flash of orange fire behind the right engine. Not an explosion, but a surge. Compressor stall. The engine was choking on moisture. "Mayday, mayday," the captain's voice cracked. "Dual engine failure. We're losing altitude. Prepare for," the broadcast cut off. The power failed. The cabin plunged into darkness, leaving only the dim green glow of emergency lights, casting ghostly shadows on every face. The plane began to spin and plummet like a withered leaf. I was pinned to my seat by centrifugal force as tablets, mugs, blankets, and bags became lethal projectiles. A thermos slammed into the seat in front, denting the hard plastic. I clutched my life vest, my mind racing with fragmented survival instructions. Keep the back straight, protect the head and neck, and use soft items to cushion the face while maintaining an airway. I spotted a gray blanket in the aisle, but it was out of reach. Too late. The plane dove vertically. Weightlessness sent blood rushing to my head, my vision tunneling into darkness. I heard muffled screams, my ears numb from the rapid pressure changes. Through a cracked window, I saw a glimpse of the abyss, a rift in the clouds revealing endless dark green forest and white surf crashing against the coast. Nice view, I thought absurdly, if this were a travel ad. Then, my head slammed into the seat ahead. A dull thud of bone against plastic. The world went silent. Darkness swallowed my senses before pain could even register. Just before losing consciousness, a hallucination or final neural discharge flickered across my retinas. A minimalist, translucent blue interface appeared, displaying cold white text. System initializing. Host bound. Scanning status. Vitals. Temp 36.5 degrees Celsius. Dropping. HR 142 BPM. SPO 294%. Mild concussion. High adrenaline. Environment. Signal conflict. Last cache. Ground 28 degrees Celsius. External sensors lost. Biofeedback indicates lethal storm conditions. Warning. Survival mode activated. Loading core database. The text flickered. Top left. Temp. 36.5 degrees Celsius 36.1 degrees Celsius. HR. 142 BPM. Stamina. 91% 86%. Satiety. 78%. Hydration. 83%. Health. Mild concussion, cervical strain, soft tissue trauma imminent. No voice, no explanation. It was as eerie as a silent health notification. I tried to focus, but the interface glitched like an old TV and dissolved into the darkness. I passed out. The plane continued its descent, the sounds of hail, tearing metal, and wind drowned out by the roar of the abyss. Outside, the dark green island forest loomed closer. System prompt. Tutorial starting. Please add to library and ensure you have accidental injury insurance. The waves lapped patiently against the shore. I opened my eyes in the damp sand. My first thought. My head felt like it was being drilled. The interface floated in my vision. Temp. 35.8 degrees Celsius. Mild hypothermia. HR. 118 BPM. Stamina. 65%. Satiety. 78%. Hydration. 76%. Health. Mild concussion. Rest advised. Left shoulder contusion. Hand abrasions. Right calf laceration. I stared for 3 seconds. Good news, I croaked. I've got a system. Given the plane crash, this was hardly the most surprising thing. I tried to move my fingers. Bad news. The system is a mute. The interface remained static, like an ICU monitor. I sat up, sand falling from my clothes. Every movement sent a spike of pain through my skull. Top right. Ambient. 26 degrees Celsius. Feels like 24 degrees Celsius. Weather. Cloudy. 92% humidity. Danger. High. Time. 14 hours and 8 minutes. I had been out for 2 hours. I looked up, breathless. 50 meters away, the Learjet 75 wreckage lay embedded in the sand and jungle edge. The fuselage was torn open, the left wing snapped, and the tail emitted acrid black smoke. Debris was scattered for 100 meters. The beach stretched out, white sand turning gray in the dim light, bordered by an impenetrable wall of dark green rainforest. It was eerily empty. "Hey, is anyone there?" I shouted, my voice swallowed by the surf. No response. A circular area expanded on the bottom left of the interface, showing my location and scattered debris. Radar map. Range, 100 meters. I stood up, dizzy. My shirt was ruined, and my right pant leg was soaked in dried, sandy blood. My calf burned. System prompt. Diagnosis, superficial laceration. 8 centimeters, dermal depth. Contamination risk. High, seawater/sand. Priority. 1. Rinse with sterile or fresh water. 2. If water is scarce, use local medicinal plants with antibacterial properties. 3. Forbidden. Do not use seawater. High risk of Vibrio infection and necrosis. 4. Cover with clean cloth and monitor. Got it. No seawater, I muttered. System, how about a quest? Silence. Red text flashed. Warning, concussion symptoms persisting. Limit neck movement. Neck brace. I recalled the U.S. Army Survival Manual. I tore strips from my cotton shirt. The fabric tore with a dull sound. I fashioned 3 wide strips. I scanned the beach and found a straight, 40 centimeters branch. Snap. I broke it to size. The system displayed a diagram. Neck brace construction. Secure branch behind neck with cloth to maintain neutral spine. It looked like IKEA instructions. I braced a branch against my neck, securing it with cloth strips. My hands trembled from cold and nerves, causing the first knot to slip. The system prompted, "Square knots are more secure." I retied it using a square knot. Though the hard branch felt strange against my neck, it successfully stabilized my head. Crafted simple neck brace. Skill point +1. Available skill points. 1. A skill point right at the start. I chuckled, finding the system's RPG-like generosity amusing. I moved my neck and scanned the smoking wreckage. Fuel leaks meant a risk of secondary explosions, so I avoided the main fuselage but scouted the debris field. I grabbed a 1.5-meter branch and approached a 2-meter square cabin interior panel. Its aramid honeycomb structure was exposed, and the aluminum skin edges were razor-sharp. I poked it with my branch. System prompt. Material. Aviation aluminum alloy, e.g., 2024 or 7075. High strength, but corrosion resistance drops in humid heat. Utilize immediately. Time to craft, I muttered. Finding a fist-sized rock, I knelt and began hammering at a seam in the aluminum plate. Clang, clang, clang. The sound echoed across the beach, each strike jarring my aching head. After 20 hits, the seam widened. I braced the plate with my knees and pried it open. The metal groaned under the stress. I snapped off a 25 by 10 centimeters shard. Its edges were jagged but sharp. Wrapping one end in a scrap of my shirt for a handle, I tested its cutting ability. "My first knife," I said, watching the sunlight glint off the crude, school project-like blade. I tucked the blade into my belt and turned my attention to the nearby, overturned airline cart. Using my branch, I sifted through the twisted stainless steel frame and plastic debris, spotting a 500 milliliters water bottle trapped underneath. The seal was still intact. I shook it, the sound of liquid music to my ears. System. Item. Pure drinking water. Capacity. 500 milliliters. Status. Sealed. Advice. Sip 100 to 150 milliliters hourly. Avoid gulping. I opened it and took a few measured sips, feeling immediate relief. I kept it tightly. Hydration. 76%, 82%. A glint in the sand caught my eye. It was a palm-sized shard of aircraft window glass, curved and intact. Might be useful. I smoothed the sharpest edges with my rock and tucked it into my backpack. System. Item. polycarbonate / acrylic aircraft window shard. Properties: high transparency, impact resistant, curved surface. A few meters away, I found a larger piece of aluminum skin, roughly 1.5 by 1 meters. It was relatively flat and undamaged. Perfect for a roof. I rolled it into a cylinder, tied it with stray wire, and set it aside to carry later. More items lay near the cart. I found a dented but sealed 500 milliliters stainless steel thermos and an aluminum meal box. System warning. Item: aluminum foil meal box. Properties: lightweight, high thermal conductivity. Warning: direct flame contact, over 800 degrees Celsius, will cause rapid melting and food contamination. Use indirect heating only. Author's note: the system warns against direct fire because thin-walled aluminum has low heat capacity. Localized hotspots can cause rapid structural collapse even if the melting point is 660 degrees Celsius. Understood, no direct fire. I set the box aside and found a 300 milliliters stainless steel seasoning jar. System: item: stainless steel container. Properties: corrosion resistant, high melting point, suitable for direct flame. This can be my pot, though it's small. Finally, I salvaged a nylon backpack containing a wrinkled shirt, a USB-C cable, and a ballpoint pen. To carry the large aluminum sheet, I cut strips from a seatbelt and lashed the rolled metal to the side of my pack. I packed my tools and supplies, shouldering the heavy load. Stamina: 65%, 63%. Already dropping? I gasped. My stamina bar is made of paper. I decided to avoid the main wreckage due to the thick smoke and fuel fumes, prioritizing water, food, and first aid. The radar map showed yellow resource markers nearby, the closest being 20 meters away at the edge of the jungle. I advanced using the beat the grass to scare the snake technique, tapping the ground ahead with my branch to deter any hidden reptiles. After 10 meters, I reached a coconut tree. It leaned toward the sea, laden with green coconuts. System: plant: coconut, Cocos nacifera. Fruit: rich in water, electrolytes, and medium-chain fatty acids. Maturity: green, high water, tender meat. Advice: strike the weak fibers at the top. I set my pack down and found a flat stone. I positioned a coconut and began hammering the eyes at the top. Bang, bang, bang. After a dozen strikes, the fibers gave way. I used the stone's edge to pry a hole the size of a coin. I tilted the coconut back and drank. The cool, nutty liquid was a perfect blend of electrolytes and sugar. I drank greedily. Hydration plus 10%, satiety plus 5%. Current hydration, 91%, satiety, 83%. I finished the first, then opened a second, pouring the remainder into my thermos. Next, I wiped my mouth and looked toward the jungle edge. Several banana plants stood there with broad, sail-like leaves. System: plant: banana, Musa baju. Leaves: waterproof, suitable for shelter/packaging. Stem: ornamental variety, inedible, useful for shelter. I used my aluminum knife to cleanly sever 3 large leaves. I rolled the leaves, tied them to my pack, and felt my stamina dip again. Stamina: 63%, 60%. I sat down, gasping. The dizziness from my concussion was worsening. I needed to treat my wounds and rest. Scanning the ground, I spotted a patch of small, heart-shaped leaves creeping along the soil. Plant: Centella asiatica. Medicinal value: clears heat, detoxifies, promotes wound healing, anti-inflammatory. Usage: crush fresh leaves for topical application. Perfect. I grabbed a handful, crushed them against a stone with my blade, and rolled up my pant leg to apply the poultice. The 8 centimeters wound was raw, edges curled, embedded with sand, and inflamed. The system flashed a red pollution assessment, high. Water is more urgent than medicine. Recalling the system's advice, I grabbed my 450 milliliters water bottle, bit my lip, and poured a thin stream over the wound. The water flushed away grit and debris. The stinging forced my muscles to tense. After 30 seconds and roughly 60 milliliters of water, the area looked significantly cleaner. I tightened the cap, wincing at the waste. System: wound contamination significantly reduced. Water reserves: 370 ml. Using the aluminum blade, I picked out the remaining deep-seated sand. then pressed crushed Centella asiatica leaves onto the wound. A cooling sensation took hold. I bandaged the wound with a clean strip of my shirt. My hand still shook, but less than before. Infection risk lowered. First aid practice proficiency plus 0.1. Level LV.1.0-LV.1.1. It even levels up with decimals. I chuckled. This system is like a personal trainer, giving XP for every bit of effort. My status bar updated. Health. Wound emergency treated. I sat against a piece of wreckage, looking up. The clouds shifted from heavy gray to wispy. Distant thunder rumbled, but no rain fell. The humidity was stifling, my clothes cold and sticky. It was 1447. I needed a shelter. Hardcore tips. Centella asiatica contains triterpenoids that stimulate collagen synthesis and accelerate wound healing, used in Southeast Asian folk medicine for centuries. Survival trivia. Forcing yourself to stay awake after a concussion is a myth. Rest aids recovery, provided someone checks your consciousness every 2 hours. The ocean waves faded into the background. Studying the radar map, I prioritized my needs. Body temperature 35.8 degrees Celsius, wet clothes, hypothermia risk. I needed a windbreak and a fire. On the map's edge, a gray contour appeared, a recessed rock wall 80 meters away. Terrain scan results popped up. Coordinates, 15 degrees north by east, distance 82 m. Features, 3 m high rock wall, overhanging ledge, 1.2 m deep recess. Ground, sandy soil, appears dry. Risk, above tide line, sheltered, far from swamps/dense forest, low insect risk. Recommendation, temporary shelter site. This is the one. Carrying my gear, I moved toward the wall, leaning on a branch. My leg throbbed. My stamina dropped from 60% to 58%. Reaching the wall, I exhaled. The spot was perfect, a natural alcove with dry sand, protected by an overhang, offering a clear view. However, the ground was littered with debris and ants. Warning, signs of arthropod habitation. Advice, clear all debris to remove hiding spots for scorpions, centipedes, and ants. I set down my pack and began. I swept away large debris, then knelt to clear the fine grit. Beneath a flat stone, ants and a multi-legged insect scurried out. Fast, I muttered, using the aluminum blade to scrape away the top layer of soil where eggs might hide. Dry organic matter equals quality tinder. Store properly. Next, I needed a pest barrier. I dug into the sand outside the wall. Deep dry sand, low salt/organic content, suitable for physical barrier. I spread a 5 centimeters layer of dry sand over my cleared site and packed it down. Dry sand layer laid. Function, moisture absorption, antibacterial, pest deterrent. Ground threat reduced 60%. Stamina, 56%. Time for the frame. I gathered tropical hardwood branches, selecting 4 straight 2 m poles. The system projected a single slope frame diagram. Angle, 30 to 45 degrees for drainage. Support, Y-shaped branches. Lashing, vines or bark. I followed the diagram, propping the beams against the wall with Y-shaped supports at a 35-degree angle. I needed lashing material. I found banyan aerial roots, tough and fibrous. I cut a dozen 1 m lengths. I began lashing the joints. The vine slipped. System, use a square knot plus slip knot for better tension control. I tried again. My movements were smoother now. The practice from clearing the ground had helped. First successful construction of a simple shelter frame. Skill point +1. Total, 2. I mentally commanded. Add to craftsmanship. Craftsmanship, LV.1.0, LV.2.0. Skill points, 2-1. Effect, improved material control, precise cutting, plus 30% efficiency, minus 15% stamina consumption. Muscle memory flooded my fingers. I knew exactly how much force to apply. This upgrade is practical. I noted, continuing my work. I layered dry palm leaves, overlapping them by a third for waterproofing. I added banana leaves for insulation. Finally, I used a piece of aircraft skin from the wreckage zone, lightweight, waterproof aluminum. Aviation aluminum alloy, waterproof, reflects heat. I secured the aluminum plate with stones. The shelter was complete. Shelter assessment, can withstand light to moderate rain and provide basic wind protection. Interior space is 2 square meters, suitable for 1 to 2 people. Recommendation: maintain a fire overnight to compensate for the rock's heat absorption, which causes low temperatures. Time: 3:20 p.m. Fire making is the next priority. I asked the system to rank viable methods by success rate. 1. Convex lens focusing. Principle: sunlight concentration. Requirements: transparent curved material, 8 by 8 centimeters porthole glass fragment, sufficient sunlight, available, dry tinder. Success rate: 65%. Note: requires steady hands and 25 to 45 seconds of focus. 2. Bow drill. Principle: friction heat. Requirements: specific wood, high-quality bow drill, skill, and stamina. Success rate: less than 10% for beginners. Note: extremely stamina-intensive, high risk of blisters. Not recommended. 3. Battery short circuit. Requirements: battery with residual charge, none found. Success rate: 0%. 4. Flint/steel. Requirements: artificial flint or high-purity flint, none found. Success rate: 0%. I dismissed the bow drill, noting my lack of stamina. The decision is clear. I retrieved the porthole glass fragment, its edges smoothed by stone. It is curved and highly transparent. For tinder, I use my LV.2 craftsmanship to shred palm fibers, pine needles, and dry grass into a fluffy, aerated ball. I recall a survival technique to optimize the lens. At the beach, I place a drop of seawater on the glass. System: water drop and glass form a composite lens, shortening focal length and increasing light concentration by 15%. I select an unshaded spot and place the tinder on dry bark. I adjust the glass angle. Sunlight converges into a blinding white point under 2 millimeters in diameter. System: light intensity, 85,000 lux. Focal point temperature, 350 to 420 degrees Celsius. Duration required, 25 to 45 seconds. I hold my breath. My arms ache, and concussion-induced dizziness persists. I use my enhanced muscle control to steady the light point. After 25 seconds, the tinder center turns dark brown, and a thin wisp of smoke rises. I lean in, blowing gently and steadily onto the smoking point. The smoke thickens and swirls. At 38 seconds, a bright orange flame erupts, consuming the fibers. Success. I carefully build a conical fire structure. Once stable, I add larger branches. System: first fire successful. Skill points +1. Total available: 2. Fire provides warmth +2 degrees Celsius, light, insect repellent, psychological comfort, and cooking capability. I realize that choosing the optimal method over brute force is crucial. Next task: pest control. I recall seeing specific plants nearby. I walk to the cliffside to find a jagged-leafed, pungent herb. System: plant, Dysphania ambrosiioides. Common name: wormseed. Feature: strong odor. Traditional use: burning fresh or dried plants effectively repels insects. Perfect. I harvest several handfuls with my aluminum blade. I bundle the fresh Dysphania ambrosiioides with dry grass to create a smoke torch. I ignite the tip in the fire, then extinguish the flame, leaving only thick, pungent smoke. I begin systematic fumigation. I direct smoke into sand crevices, rock wall gaps, and the shelter's structural joints and roofing. System: volatile compounds disrupt insect olfaction. Heat and hypoxia kill hidden eggs and small arthropods. Working from upwind, I fumigate the entire shelter for 10 minutes. The shelter is now filled with a spicy, herbal scent. All visible insects are gone. System: environmental threat. Arthropods, mosquitoes, ants, spiders, significantly reduced. Now I can sleep. I extinguish the smoke torch safely. Time: for 10 p.m. Hunger strikes. Satiety is at 31%, hydration at 78%. I need food. I head to the reef area at low tide. The system radar highlights edible shellfish. I collect 20 pernivoridas. Edible: requires thorough cooking to kill pathogens. Nutrition: protein, zinc, selenium. Warning: may contain algal toxins. Cooking degrades most. I consider cooking methods. Scheme A: indirect heat, charcoal/hot stones. Temperature control: less than 400 degrees Celsius. Scheme B, metal plate heat buffer. I choose Scheme A. I clear the fire to expose hot coals and pre-scanned, non-explosive stones. I place the aluminum box with seawater and mussels on the coals. After 5 minutes of boiling, the system confirms pathogen inactivation. While waiting, I process the coconut. Using my LV.2 craftsmanship, I extract the meat and slice it for drying. System: coconut meat is high energy, store as jerky. I roast the shell interior to carbonize and harden it, preventing mold for future water storage. The mussels are ready. Using makeshift wooden chopsticks, I eat. The salty, savory flavor is a feast. System: satiety, 51% 78%. Protein intake accelerates tissue repair. Stress levels decreased. I look at the aluminum box. Knowledge is power, and so is physics. As I finish, I notice clouds gathering above the fire. System weather alert, humidity rising. Rain probability, 65% in 3 hours. Suggestion: build rainwater collection system immediately. The opportunity has arrived. I inspected my shelter. The aircraft skin aluminum plate, 1.5x1m, served as the roof. I realized I could modify it into a rain collector without removing it. I gathered stones and a thick branch. I cleared a flat area beneath the plate's lowest edge and arranged my stainless steel cup, aluminum lunchbox, and coconut shells to catch water. I needed a larger container. I tried rolling a banana leaf into a funnel, but it was too flimsy and prone to leaking. System: use composite layers. Suggestion: line with smooth leaves like taro or dense fiber. I found large taro leaves. The system noted they were waxy and waterproof but toxic. I carefully washed off any dust. I lined the banana leaf funnel with the taro leaf and secured it with aerial root fibers, creating a functional, albeit temporary, water basin. I then carefully bent the lowest 30 centimeters edge of the aluminum plate upward by 45 degrees using my craftsmanship LV.3 skills, creating a guide channel for the water. Craftsmanship proficiency plus 0.1. I placed a flat stone under the channel to prevent mud splashing into my containers. The rainwater collection system was complete. The system confirmed. Successfully modified structure for rainwater collection. Collection area, 1.2 SQM. Theoretical yield, 1.2 liters per mm of rain. Warning: observe stability during first rain. Discard initial runoff to ensure cleanliness. A moderate rain will solve my water needs for days, I noted, satisfied with the sustainable design. Survival facility built. Skill point +1. Total available, 3. I upgraded craftsmanship to LV.3.0. Description: improved material manipulation, basic metalworking enabled, plus 50% efficiency, minus 25% stamina cost. It was 5:30 p.m. Time to prepare my sleeping area. I layered dried palm and banana leaves on the sand to create a raised bed, insulating myself from dampness and insects. Next, I addressed the fire. I created a small, independent smoldering pile near the entrance using dried Dysphania ambrosioids and grass. It produced a steady, thin smoke to repel insects without filling the shelter with fumes. I tucked fresh, aromatic Dysphania ambrosioids leaves into my bedding to provide continuous insect repellent. I inspected the bedding to ensure no insects were hiding in the leaves or sand. Stamina dropped to 42% as dusk fell. I decided on one last sweep of the area with my radar active. At 90 meters, a faint green dot appeared on the radar. A teammate signal. I hurried toward the edge of my detection range. I pushed through dense brush. I found a girl curled in a shallow pit. Her chestnut hair was matted with sand, her gray JK uniform torn, revealing bruised skin. Her lips were pale and dry, and her right knee had a dried, bloody scrape. It was the girl from the plane who had been sitting in the front row. She was unconscious. Name: Lin Tiantian. Status: unconscious, mild dehydration, superficial leg wound, body temp 36.1 degrees Celsius. Mood: unconscious. Affinity: 0%. Physical: hungry, dehydrated, stress-induced coma. I checked her pulse. It was weak but steady. I looked at the darkening sky, then back at my shelter and fire. Lucky you, I muttered. Hardcore tips. Dysphania ambrosioid smoke contains eucalyptol and linalool, effective natural repellents. Ensure ventilation to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning. Survival trivia. Never place aluminum containers directly over open flames. The metal melts at 660 degrees Celsius, while wood fires reach 800 to 1000 degrees Celsius. The sound of waves clung to the humid air. I knelt by the girl, observing her pale lips and disheveled state. Name: Lin Tiantian. Status: unconscious, mild dehydration, superficial leg wound, body temp 36.1 degrees Celsius. Mood: unconscious. Affinity: 0%. Physical: hungry, dehydrated, stress-induced coma. I checked her pulse, 72 BPM. Alive is enough? I whispered, checking her spine for injuries. Spine: no displacement. Risk: low. I tested her skin elasticity. The slow recoil confirmed mild dehydration. The system warned. Rain probability increased to 85% within 90 minutes. Dark clouds gathered. Seeing my fire 90 meters away, I decided, time to go. I approached a nearby plant. Plant: Magnolia grandifolia. Features: thick, waxy, low-friction leaves. Suitable for a drag mat. Using my aluminum blade, I cut 2 large leaves and placed them under her. I knelt, supporting her neck and hips to keep her spine aligned. I rolled her onto the leaves and began dragging her backward, keeping my back straight. Every half-meter of dragging cost 2% stamina. I dragged her with one hand while using a branch for balance, occasionally checking the fire's position. I passed a shrub. Plant: Rhodamyrtus tomentosa. Features: aromatic leaves. Crushed leaves can stop bleeding and pain. I noted the location. At 2/3 distance, stamina hit 33%. I stopped, gasping for air, my legs trembling. After 10 seconds, I resumed. The final 20 meters were grueling. Stamina: less than 30%. Rest advised. I ignored the warning, counting down the final steps. As we reached the shelter, I collapsed, stamina at 28%, my vision blurring. I carefully rolled Lin Tiantian from the leaves onto the palm leaf bed. I lifted her head and pressed the thermos containing 250 milliliters of coconut water to her cracked lips. As I poured slowly, her throat moved. When she choked after 150 milliliters, I immediately stopped, turned her head, and patted her back. Slow down, I said steadily. System: Lin Tiantian hydration. 55%, 65%. I capped the remaining 100 milliliters and checked her injuries. I crushed Rhodamyrtus tomentosa leaves with stones and applied the paste to her bruised forehead, securing it with shirt strips. System: Rhodamyrtus tomentosa applied. Pain relief / anti-inflammatory activated. Rain intensified. I quickly extended our shelter into an L shape using banana and palm leaves. I verified the rainwater collection system was positioned under the aluminum gutter. I moved the smoking insect repellent fire upwind and covered her with my damp suit jacket. Only then did I sit, exhausted and famished. I ate 100 g of muscle meat and 30 g of dried coconut. Satiety: 78%, 85%. I drank my remaining 100 milliliters of coconut water. Hydration: 78%, 81%. I opened my 500 milliliters water bottle, forcing myself to stop after drinking 100 milliliters. Hydration: 81%, 85%. Staring at the remaining 270 milliliters, I swallowed hard, capped the bottle, and stowed it. I sat by the fire to keep watch. Rain drummed on the aluminum roof, and the collection system began to drip rhythmically. Rainwater collection increasing. I monitored her. Her temperature rose to 36.5 degrees Celsius, and her status shifted to light coma/sleep. At 8:45 p.m., she groaned and opened her eyes. She looked dazed, then terror struck, causing her to recoil and wince in pain. "Don't move," I said firmly. She froze, staring at me like a frightened deer. "The plane crashed," I stated. "I'm Li Yun Fan, from your flight. I brought you here." She scanned the shelter and my face, calming slightly. System: Lin Tiantian. Fear, confusion, slight relief. Affinity: 0%, 5%. Attribute: strength plus 0.1. I remember, the turbulence. She rasped. "Forget it for now," I interrupted. "Rest. We'll talk at dawn." She swallowed with difficulty. "Just the two of us?" For now, tomorrow I'll search for others. Tonight, we just survive. I handed her roasted coconut pieces. She ate ravenously, then drank from the thermos. With watery eyes, she asked, Brother Yunfan, have you eaten? I have. I pointed to the shells. Affinity, 5%, 15%. She relaxed, licking her fingers. Can we go back? Yes, I replied decisively. She blinked, stunned. But first, I leaned in. You must learn to survive here. And I smirked faintly. I will ensure you survive. Lin Tian blushed, looking down at my jacket. Affinity, 15%, 25%. Attribute, charisma, plus 0.1. I noticed her red ears, feeling a strange, dangerous pull. As the temperature dropped to 23 degrees Celsius, she shivered. I stoked the fire. Cold? Yes, she trembled. I opened my arm. Come here. She hesitated, then carefully moved toward me. As she leaned in, my muscles tensed. She smelled of milk and rain. Through her thin shirt, her warmth pressed against me. I swallowed. This was more intense than any work project. I remained calm, wrapping my arm around her. She trembled initially from cold and nerves. Then, her body softened. She rested her head in my shoulder, her hair brushing my chin. I forced myself to ignore the ticklish, fragrant sensation. Her shivering ceased, replaced by a sense of reliance. My heart raced. I suppressed my urges, reminding myself she was a vulnerable survivor. I shifted slightly to create space, cursing my own lack of discipline. Sleep, I said, my voice low. I'm on watch. She nodded, her breathing deepening until she fell into a sound sleep. Her satisfied sigh brushed my ear. System, Lin Tian in deep sleep, recovery plus 50%. Highly sensitive constitution triggered. Physical contact creates strong reliance. Affinity, 25%, 35%. Affinity, 35% reached. Reward, 1 free attribute point. Available points, 0.1. I raised an eyebrow, feeling her steady breathing. I looked down. She slept soundly, looking completely defenseless. I looked away from the fire, suppressing my inner restlessness. I had to admit, the feeling was undeniably good. Distracting myself, I commanded the system, allocate all free attribute points to strength. The upgrade was instantaneous. Strength, 4.3, 5.3, free points, 10. A warm, solid sensation spread from my core to my limbs. My muscles felt compacted and reinforced. The soreness in my arms and legs from dragging the survivor vanished, replaced by a reliable sense of power. My grip felt firm and stable. My core felt stronger, replacing my usual office worker fragility with a solid, supported posture. I adjusted my sitting position, feeling my spine stabilized by powerful muscles. With my increased strength and rest, my stamina began to recover. System status, stamina/energy, 28%, 45%, recovery boosted by strength. That's better, I thought, noting my improved endurance. Holding Lin Tian, I watched the rainy night. The fire burned steadily, and the sound of rain was rhythmic. Exhaustion, especially from my concussion, washed over me. Holding the soft, fragrant girl made sleep difficult. Every breath she took reminded me of our intimacy. I closed my eyes, but my mind was filled with her flushed face and innocent eyes. I sighed. I couldn't truly sleep, so I settled for a hunter's light sleep, relaxing my body while keeping my senses alert to the fire, the rain, and her breathing. It wasn't deep sleep, but it was better than nothing. System status, stamina/energy, 45% slow recovery, light sleep, 60% efficiency. Time passed until a sharp clang broke the silence. I sat up instantly. Lin Tian stirred, but didn't wake. I listened. Clang. Hardcore tips. Rhodomyrtus tomentosa leaves contain anti-inflammatory agents. Crushed, they treat soft tissue pain, but must not be used on open wounds. Survival trivia. When dragging a casualty, keep the spine stable to avoid paralysis. Clang. A second metallic sound came from the reef area to the northeast. I gently moved Lin Tian against the rock wall. She murmured, but remained asleep. I stood up. Stamina 46%. It was enough. A metallic sound could mean survivors or danger. Following the first law of man versus wild and green hell. Exploring in the dark without light is suicide. I needed a torch. I scanned my fuel pile and locked onto a dry branch. Material: Casuarina equisetifolia branch. Status: air-dried, 15% moisture. Hard and slow-burning. Suitable for a torch handle. I trimmed the branch with my aluminum blade and carved anti-slip grooves into the handle. I then struck the other end with the blade. Thud, thud. A cross-shaped split appeared, increasing the surface area for fuel. For the core, he chose Pandanus tectorius leaves, which were fibrous and dry. Ignition: 200 degrees Celsius. Stable, low smoke. I stuffed the dry fibers into the split handle. For the outer layer, I used Coco's Nicifera leaves, which were oily and bright burning. I wrapped the shredded palm leaves around the core, forming a ball. I used banyan aerial roots as cordage, tough and durable. I lashed the torch head tightly, using a double-layer spiral technique to ensure it wouldn't fall apart. I ignited it over the fire. Whoosh! A bright orange flame erupted, illuminating the sand and rain within a 5-meter radius. Self-made torch. Estimated duration: 17 minutes. Enough. I grabbed a Puraria lobata vine for protection. I tied the 2-meter vine to my belt to drag behind me. The vibrations would warn off snakes. I took my walking stick, leaving my right hand free from my blade. I checked on Lin Tiantian. She was in deep sleep, recovery plus 50%. Wait for me, I whispered, stepping into the rain. The torchlight cut a tunnel through the rain. My system radar showed a 100-meter radius, with Lin Tiantian's green dot 90 meters behind me. I moved toward the sound, probing the ground with my stick. The vine dragged behind me with a rhythmic swish. Stamina: 46%, 43%. Hydration: 85%, 84%. Torch remaining: 15, 22, 40 meters later, a new green dot appeared on the radar. Someone was alive. I hurried past a cluster of Rhodomyrtus tomentosa toward the reef area. The green dot was in a hollow between two rocks. I raised the torch. A woman in a soaked flight attendant uniform sat curled up. She held a piece of metal, and her arm was crudely splinted with a silk tie and twigs. She looked up, her eyes filled with terror, then forced a professional, steady composure. "Who's there?" she rasped. "I am Li Yunfan, fellow passenger." I knelt, keeping my distance to avoid intimidating her. "Are you hurt?" "My right forearm. I think it's broken," she said, wincing. System scan. Name: Su Man. Diagnosis: distal radius fracture. Severe swelling. Improper splinting causing circulation issues. Status: conscious. Pain 7/10. Mild dehydration. Core temp 35.8 degrees Celsius. Risk of hypothermia. Mood: pain, despair, professional facade. Affinity: 5%. Status: needs emergency splint reset. Early hypothermia. I observed Su Man's forearm. The tie was too tight, and the uneven branches were digging into her swollen flesh. This improper pressure risked ischemia and compartment syndrome, which would effectively doom the limb in the wild. I needed to perform a high-standard orthopedic fixation. I commanded the system. Consume 1 skill point to upgrade first aid practice. Skill points: 1-0. First aid practice. LV.1.1, LV.2.1. Knowledge base unlocked. Field surgery. Long bone fracture splinting principles. Limb circulation assessment. Padding techniques. And biomechanical material application. A flood of structured knowledge entered my mind. I gained the muscle memory to palpate bone alignment, assess capillary refill, and craft biomechanically sound splints from primitive materials. "Your fixation is wrong," I stated calmly. "The pressure points are obstructing circulation. It must be redone immediately." Su Man's lashes trembled. She knew the crude binding was worsening the pain, but she had exhausted her strength just to stabilize it. "But there are no splints or bandages." "There are," I replied, standing up. "Stay put." I approached a fallen log covered in bryophyta moss. Status: dry. Properties: absorbent, soft, cushioning. Use: ideal padding. I collected the moss, then used my aluminum blade to scrape bark from a nearby sapling. Artocarpus altilis, breadfruit, inner bark. Properties: soft, elastic, smooth. Use: friction reduction. I then selected Coco's Nicifera, coconut, leaf sheath, for the splint. noting its natural curvature and toughness. I carved two 25 centimeters by 5 centimeters splints from the leaf sheaths, smoothing the edges. Their natural arc perfectly fit the cylindrical forearm. For binding, I found Melastoma candidum near the rocks. Properties: tough, bast fibers. Processing: soaked and twisted, strength comparable to cotton rope. I stripped the fibers, soaked them in rainwater, and twisted them into 4-strand, 3 mm, thick ropes. I returned to Su-Man, the torchlight steady. I'm redoing the fixation. It will hurt initially, but the relief will follow. Don't move your arm. Understand. Su-Man looked at me. My face was stern in the firelight, but my eyes held a calm, unquestionable authority. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of the plane crash. She nodded, lips pressed tight. I carefully cut the silk tie. As the pressure released, Su-Man gasped. Deep breaths, I said, removing the branches to reveal the swollen, pale forearm. With system assistance, I assessed the limb. Can you feel this? Numb. Wiggle your fingers. She complied. The nerves were intact. Capillary refill took 2 seconds, an improvement, but circulation remained compromised. Starting fixation. I lined the sheaths with moss and breadfruit bark, creating a 5 mm thick composite cushion. I placed the splints on the palm and back of the forearm, extending past the elbow and wrist. Using the melastoma fiber rope, I secured the first tie above the wrist, checking the tension with my pinky finger. I added a second tie above the fracture and a third below the elbow. I tested the tension after every tie to ensure circulation wasn't restricted. I finished with an H-shaped wrist wrap to maintain a functional position, then used a strip from my shirt to create a sling, keeping her elbow at a 90-degree angle. The operation took 6 minutes. Su-Man's jaw relaxed, and she took a breath, looking surprised. The pain, it changed, she whispered. It's just throbbing now. Pain index, 7 out of 10, 4 out of 10. Capillary refill, 3S, 1.5S. Circulation, restored. Milestone reached. Professional standard complex fracture fixation. Skill point, +1. First aid practice, LV.2.4. Available skill points, 2. Su-Man affinity, 5%, 30%. Initial trust. Affinity bonus, 1 free attribute point. I checked Su-Man's hypothermic state and my own, stamina, 42%. The return trip would be grueling. I assigned the point to Constitution. Constitution, 4.8, 5.8. A surge of warmth flooded my body. My tremors ceased, muscle fatigue faded, and my breathing deepened. A sense of resilience replaced my exhaustion. Stamina/energy, 42%, 55%. Can you walk? I asked. She stood with my help. Her wet uniform clung to her, revealing a mature, curvaceous figure. I looked away, my throat bobbing. I positioned her arm around my neck and held her waist, supporting most of her weight. Let's go. I led the way back to the shelter. As we moved, her soft curves pressed against my side. Every contact reminded me of her beauty. Su-Man blushed, feeling both embarrassed and strangely comforted by my steady grip. Su-Man affinity, 30%, 35%. I stayed focused, though a faint smile touched my lips. The dragging vines behind them kept small predators at bay. 11 minutes later, the shelter's fire appeared 30 meters ahead. Simultaneously, 2 stationary red dots appeared on the radar map near the entrance. Creature, Sus scrofa vitatus, Javan warty pig, adult. Status, alert/curious, hostility, low defensive. I stopped. A warthog isn't an apex predator, but a charge could easily land them in the ICU. I signaled Su-Man to hide behind a tree, then hurled a long branch into the bushes 10 meters away. The crash echoed through the night. On the radar, 2 red dots vanished into the jungle. Crisis averted. I helped Su-Man back to the shelter. As we reached the rock wall, a petite figure lunged out. Lin Tian, eyes red and puffy, trembled as she collided with me, clinging to my waist. Brother Yinfan, where did you go? I heard strange noises. I was so scared. She sobbed into my chest. I patted her back. It's okay. We found another survivor. Let's go inside. Lin Tian affinity, 35%, 45%. The shelter was cramped. I introduced them. Su-Man offered a pained, professional smile while Lin Tian curiously studied the disheveled flight attendant. Priority, water safety. The collected rainwater needed treatment. I arranged my aluminum box and stainless steel seasoning jar. Aluminum melts at 660 degrees Celsius, risking contamination, while 304 stainless steel is more durable. I set up a triangular stone support near the fire. The aluminum box sat 10 centimeters above the flames. The steel jar rested directly on the coals. Both containers were filled with rainwater and the fire was stoked. While waiting, I cleaned Su-man's forehead wound, checked her splint, and shared the last 50 g of coconut jerky, a meager portion for 3. The water boiled. I kept it at a rolling boil for 5 minutes to neutralize pathogens. Cooking proficiency plus 0.1, it was 1 a.m. With only 2.8 square meters of space, sleeping arrangements were a challenge. I sat against the wall to keep watch. Su-man lay on my left, leaning on my arm for support, while Lin Tian curled into my right side, arms wrapped around my waist. Their bodies pressed together, sharing warmth as the firelight flickered against the rocks. The physical proximity of two women after a long, cold day triggered an involuntary, awkward physiological response in me. Lin Tian felt the change through their damp clothes. She stiffened, her breath hitching. 2 seconds later, she didn't pull away. Instead, she buried her face deeper into my shoulder, holding me tighter. I sensed her reaction. Touched by her trust, I gently patted her back to reassure her. Lin Tian relaxed completely in my arms. Lin Tian affinity, 45% 60%, threshold, absolute reliance, to infatuation. Affinity 3060 reward, 2 free attribute points, highly sensitive constitution triggered. Intimacy and security have fostered a deep emotional bond. Available free attribute points, 0.2. I checked my stats. Strength 5.3 was decent, but I needed more for future labor and combat. I assigned 1 point to strength. Strength, 5.36.3. Remaining points. 1. A surge of heat flooded my muscles. My arms felt suddenly powerful, capable of crushing hardwood. Lin Tian's weight seemed to vanish. I took a silent breath, internalizing the newfound power. Night deepened. Su-man and Lin Tian drifted into a deep sleep. Stamina/energy, 55% slowly recovering, light sleep. Hardcore tips. For bone fractures, use the 3-point binding principle. Ensure each tie allows a finger's width of space to prevent circulation loss. Survival trivia. Barnacles are sea foie gras, containing 20% protein and essential minerals like zinc and iron. I woke up, my system booting like a server. Stamina, 92%. Satiety, 10%. Hunger gnawed at me. Lin Tian was still clinging to me like a koala, while Su-man slept in a restrained, professional posture. I carefully moved Lin Tian's arm. She muttered, "Brother Yunfan, don't go," in her sleep, but eventually settled. Su-man woke up. Her eyes met mine. After a moment of confusion, she signaled morning with her lips. I nodded and stood up silently. Thick fog blanketed the area. I walked 15 meters to a palm tree to handle my business. I used my aluminum blade to dig a shallow pit in the sand, a makeshift latrine. I gathered leaves from a nearby shrub. Plant, wild fig, Ficus spp. Status, intact, oval, 12 by 8 centimeters, fine fuzz on surface. Properties, non-toxic, no irritant sap. The fuzz provides effective cleaning. System tip, always verify plants are non-toxic and free of milky sap before use. I used the leaves for hygiene, buried the waste, and covered it with dry leaves to mask the scent. Hygiene complete. Disease risk -5%, temporary. I gathered extra leaves and returned. I refilled their water containers and cleaned the aluminum and steel vessels with dry moss. I tapped Lin Tian's cheek. Tian, wake up." She sat up, smiling at me before blushing as she remembered the night's intimacy. Su-man sat up as well, looking equally flustered. I asked calmly if they needed to use the latrine. Both women blushed and nodded. I helped Su-man up, guiding her to the palm tree and handing her a branch and some fig leaves while turning my back. Use these leaves to dig. They're soft and non-toxic. The fuzzy side cleans better, but don't press too hard. Bury them when finished. Call me when you're done. Su-man took the leaves and branches, her fingers brushing my palm. She looked at me with a complex expression, embarrassment, gratitude, and a softness born from being cared for. Thank you, she whispered. It's what I'm here for, I replied, turning my back to give her space. After a brief silence, the sound of digging and rustling followed. 2 minutes later, Su-man called out, I'm done. I returned to find the hole buried and covered with leaves. Su-man stood nearby, her professional composure returning, though her reddened ears betrayed her. Su-man affinity, 35% 45%, care and respect significantly boosted affinity. I helped Lin Tiantian next. She was shy and kept her head down, but seeing my calm, matter-of-fact demeanor put her at ease, and she even tugged on my sleeve afterward. Lin Tiantian affinity, 60% 68%. Back at the shelter, I used a clean scrap of my shirt dipped in fresh water to help the women clean their faces and hands. Clean your fingers carefully, I reminded them. Even non-toxic leaves require hygiene. They complied, the cool water washing away the sticky discomfort. I checked their injuries. Lin Tiantian's bruise was fading, and her leg wound was healing well. Su-man's fracture showed no increased swelling, and her finger mobility and circulation were normal. Injury assessment. Lin Tiantian recovering well. Su-man's fracture stable, no signs of infection. You're both recovering well, I said, bringing them relief. The system clock read 7:02. A prompt appeared. Current tide, late ebb. The 1 to 2 hour window around low tide is optimal for foraging. It was time. Stay by the fire, I said, grabbing my aluminum kit, blade, and backpack. I'm heading to the reef for breakfast. Be careful, Brother Yinfan, Lin Tiantian said. Su-man looked into my eyes and added softly, Please, stay safe. I nodded and stepped into the fog. Visibility was low, but my radar map showed 2 green dots behind me and several yellow resource nodes in the gray, unexplored reef area ahead. I reached the reef. The low tide revealed black rocks, clear tide pools, and shellfish glistening in the morning mist. I got to work. First, Pernivortis. I pried the emerald green clusters from the shaded rock faces using my aluminum blade. Pop. The shell came loose. Pernivortis. Status. Fresh. Edible. 12% protein. Warning. Boil for 4 to 5 minutes to eliminate parasites and bacteria. I collected over 20, filling the bottom of my kit. Second, Crassostrea spp. Found at the lower tide line. These larger, gray-white oysters were harder to pry, nearly dulling my blade. But the succulent meat inside was worth the effort. Crassostrea spp. Status. Fresh. Edible. 10% protein. Rich in zinc/iron. Must be boiled. I harvested 7 or 8 large ones. Third, Balanus spp. These conical clusters were everywhere. I tapped them off the rocks with the back of my blade. Balanus spp. Status. Fresh. Edible. 20% protein. Must be boiled. With the kit full, I started using my backpack. Unexpectedly, I spotted small Hemigrapsis spp. Crabs in a pool. I struck quickly with my blade. Clack. I caught one. The others vanished into crevices. Small Hemigrapsis spp. Status. Dead. Edible sweetmeat. Finally, I gathered Ulva lactuca and Turbinaria ornata from the pools, rinsing them in seawater and wrapping them in large leaves. Ulva lactuca. Edible. Vitamins/fiber. Turbinaria ornata. Edible. Iodine. Note. Rinse with fresh water to remove salt. I headed back. At the shelter, the fire was still burning. Lin Tiantian was adding twigs while Su-man arranged the coconut shells and aluminum kit. They beamed when I returned. So much. Lin Tiantian drooled at the shellfish. Let's process them. I rinsed the seaweed, then dumped all the seafood into the aluminum kit. I placed the overflow of Pernivortis on hot stones near the fire. I arranged the kit over the embers of my granite-rimmed stove, using heat radiation for cooking. I also boiled rainwater in my steel container for drinking. As the water boiled, I maintained the heat for over 15 minutes to ensure safety. Cooking proficiency plus 0.2. Lin Tiantian's stomach growled, making her blush. Su-man chuckled, though she was clearly hungry too. After boiling, I moved the kit to cool and set the drinking water aside. I prepared a bowl for Su-man: oyster meat, perna vortis, crab meat, and softened seaweed. I sat beside her and offered a piece of oyster with wooden chopsticks. Su-man blushed. I can do it myself. You only have one hand, and it's injured, I said flatly. Open up. My tone left no room for argument. Su-man hesitated, then opened her mouth. The taste was heavenly, fresh, sweet, and briny. It was the best meal she'd ever had. Good? I asked. She nodded, her voice soft. I continued feeding her. Su-man grew relaxed, eventually leaning forward to accept the food. Su-man affinity, 45% 52%, touched by my care. Lin Tiantun, meanwhile, was happily struggling to pick the meat out of the shells herself. Brother Yinfan, this seaweed is crunchy. This crab is so sweet, she chirped. I ate my own portion quickly. Satiety, 10% 85%, hydration, 95%. They ate 2/3 of the haul, saving the rest for lunch. After breakfast, I left the women to rest while I went out again. I found 2 more coconuts, shared the water, and gathered Casuarina equisetifolia branches. I sliced some coconut meat and laid it on hot stones to dry into jerky. I looked at the cramped shelter and the sea. This spot is too small and lacks a stable water source, I assessed. We need a better, safer permanent base. Lin Tian blinked. Are we moving? Scouting first, I said. I'm going on a short-range exploration within 1.5 kilometers to find a site with fresh water and better defense, while keeping an eye out for other survivors. I announced the homestead rules. Lin Tian must care for Su-man and keep the fire burning, while managing their remaining food and water. Su-man's priority is recovery. She may use her left hand for light organization tasks. A safety perimeter is established. Never leave the shelter's line of sight. Any anomalies, animals, or strange noises require immediate retreat into the shelter. For emergencies, strike the aluminum lunchbox. The women nodded, though Su-man worried about me scouting alone. I clarified it was a reconnaissance mission, not a reckless charge, prioritizing safety above all. To improve mobility, I allocated my last attribute point to agility, raising it from 5.5 to 6.5. My body felt lighter and more coordinated. The jungle terrain became easier to navigate, my movements were fluid, and my heightened reflexes allowed me to track swaying leaves with ease. After hydrating, I refilled my thermos, packed jerky, secured my aluminum blade, and grabbed my walking stick, ensuring my snake repellent vine was tied securely. I promised to return. Lin Tian grew teary-eyed, and Su-man whispered a plea for my safety before I vanished into the jungle. By 11 a.m., the fog thinned. I headed northwest toward the island's interior, using my radar map to track terrain and resources within a 100-meter radius. Half an hour later, I spotted a unique plant with fan-like leaves. Plant, Tetrastigma spp. Feature, a large woody vine common in Southeast Asian rainforests, acting as a natural water bottle. Method, cut the vine low, then sever the upper section and lift it to let water drip from the vascular bundles. Safety, the sap is relatively clean for emergency use, but the cut attracts insects. I used my aluminum blade to sever the vine and lifted the upper end. Clear, cool water began to drip steadily from the cut. Hydration, 85% 92%. Further along, I found Pandanus tectorius with ripe, orange-red fruit. Plant, Pandanus tectorius fruit. Status, partially ripe. Higher maturity means more sugar and juice. Value, rich in starch, sugar, and moisture for energy. Note, peel the tough outer fibers to reach the sweet, acidic pulp. I peeled the fruit, finding the pulp tasted like a mix of ripe pineapple and mango. Satiety, 85% 90%. Hydration, 92% 95%. I packed the remaining fruit. I continued gathering resources, including curcuma longa roots for anti-inflammatory use. I also collected Trametes versicolor from a fallen log for immune support. I identified Manhwa esculenta, but marked it as dangerous due to cyanide content, requiring extensive processing before consumption. I noted fresh wild boar tracks and feces, opting to bypass the area. During a break, I used spare nylon shoelaces and 2 pebbles to craft a sling, as suggested by the system. I followed the system's instructions to weave the sling. With my improved agility, I practiced, hitting a tree 15 meters away with a dull thud. Range shooting, LV.0.0, LV.0.1. Though I missed the target branch, my aim improved with practice. Range shooting, LV.0.1, LV.0.2. By 1 p.m., the terrain rose, leading me to an open area. I discovered a terrace with a natural rock cave, dry and spacious. A spring seeped from the rock wall into a stone hollow, providing a steady water source. The system scanned the site. Cave, 12 cubic meters, dry, well-ventilated, and defensible. Water, 0.5 L/hour flow, pH 7.2, safe for drinking. Safety, high. No large animal dens, minor cleanup required. It was perfect. I drank the cool, sweet spring water and filled my cup. After inspecting the cave, I left a marker and a directional branch to guide my return. I headed back, veering east to expand my scouting range. 800 meters later, my radar map briefly flashed a faint green signal. Simultaneously, I spotted a piece of fabric snagged on a thorn bush. It was high-quality, off-white silk, torn and stained with dried blood. I carefully retrieved the fabric, noting its premium texture. Blood. Human. Type AB. 18 to 36 hours old. Match. 87% probability of belonging to President Shun. President Shun, the cold female CEO. The blood trail aligned with the green signal. Clutching the silk, I stared into the deepening, fog-filled forest. It was 3:47 p.m. I was 1.5 kilometers from base with only 2 hours of daylight left. Suppressing the urge to pursue, I recorded the coordinates and tucked the silk into my bag. I turned and hurried back. Enhanced agility made my return trip swift. I leaped over obstacles with ease. I practiced with my sling on a wild chicken, missing, but my form was fluid and precise. Range shooting plus 0.1. LV.0.2, LV.0.3. By 1640, the glow of the beach shelter appeared. Brother Yunfan. Lin Tiantian spotted me first, jumping out with bright eyes. Su Man stood up, leaning against the rock wall, visibly relieved. I'm fine, I said, setting down my pack. I presented fresh spring water, Pandanus tectorius fruit, turmeric, and Trametes versicolor. I detailed the rock cave's advantages: stable water, defensibility, space, and shelter from the elements. Hope ignited in the women's eyes, especially for Su Man, who desperately needed a dry, safe environment for her recovery. Can we move there? Lin Tiantian asked expectantly. Tomorrow morning. I'll support Su Man, and Tiantian will carry the essentials. I'll carry you if the path gets rough. I organized our meager belongings, planning how to transport everything from jerky to tools. At dusk, I visited the reef area during low tide, gathering Perna Vordis and Balanus SPP to boil into a seafood soup with the day's harvest. As night fell, the trio huddled in the small shelter to share the meal. My face flickered in the firelight. I found traces of other survivors today. Both women looked at me intently. Someone is injured. I saw blood-stained fabric. It was too late and too far to investigate then. Lin Tiantian covered her mouth, while Su Man looked on with a grave expression. We move tomorrow. Once settled, we must find them, I declared. Hardcore tips. When harvesting water from Tetrastigma SPP, cut the vine diagonally and elevate the upper end to allow gravity to drain the water. Survival trivia. Tropical seafood must be boiled for at least 15 minutes to ensure complete sterilization. Author's note. The book was restructured on January 5th. If you read the first 6 chapters before this, please restart from chapter 1. Thanks for your support. I drifted back to consciousness. I opened my eyes to see. Stamina 92%. Satiety 12%. I was physically pinned. Lin Tiantian was wrapped around me like an octopus, while Su Man, favoring her left side due to her sling, pressed her soft curves against my left arm. A morning physiological reaction occurred at an inconvenient time. I sighed internally, carefully disentangling myself. Lin Tiantian mumbled, "Don't go, Brother Yunfan," but stayed asleep. Su Man remained still. I crab-walked out of the shelter. The morning mist was dense. I grabbed my aluminum blade and headed to a palm tree to dig a latrine. I took care of my business. Using ficus SPP, leaves for hygiene, I returned to the shelter. Both women were awake. Lin Tian sat up, disheveled. Su Man, noticing the intimate sleeping arrangement, blushed and looked away. Need to go? I asked casually. They nodded, their initial embarrassment fading. After they returned, I used a damp cloth to clean their faces and hands. Lin Tian acted helpless, clearly enjoying my care. I checked our water supply, refilling the bottles and cleaning their containers with dry bryophyta. Time for breakfast. System prompt. Low tide window remaining, 40 minutes. I'm heading to the reef. The women wished me safety as I vanished into the fog. The reef was a seafood market. I worked efficiently, prying perna viridis from the rocks. Perna viridis. Edible, 12% protein. Warning, boil for 5+ minutes. I fill my container. Crassostrea SPP. Were tougher, requiring significant effort to pry loose. Crassostrea SPP. Fresh. I gathered Balanus SPP, Ulva lactuca, Turbinaria ornata, and stunned 3 small Hemigrapsis SPP. I returned fully loaded. Back at the shelter, I rinsed the greens and boiled the seafood in the aluminum box. The water began to boil. I boiled the soup for over 15 minutes to ensure safety. Cooking plus 0.1. Sterilization complete. I noticed Su Man struggling to use her left hand to hold her bowl. Eat while it's hot, I said, prying open a succulent Crassostrea SPP. And feeding her. Su Man hesitated, then leaned in and took the meat from my chopsticks. It's fresh, she murmured, her voice softening. I offered her a perna viridis, holding it close to her lips. She accepted it. Su Man affinity. 52% 54%. Lin Tian struggled with a Balanus SPP. Brother Yinfan, it's bullying me, she pouted. I laughed, pried it open for her, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Here, my princess. She beamed, eating happily while eyeing the crab meat I was preparing for Su Man. I noticed and offered her a piece of crab leg. She snatched it, accidentally brushing my fingers. So sweet, she exclaimed, blushing. I smiled to myself. They ate 2/3 of the food, saving the rest for lunch. Post-breakfast, they checked their injuries. Su Man's fracture was stable, Lin Tian's scratches were healing, and my own wounds were closing. Injuries healing well. I carefully packed the fire embers into a steel container to transport them. At 8 o'clock, we began to pack. I dismantled the shelter's roof, carefully rolling the 1.5 m x 1 m aircraft skin aluminum plate into a cylinder. I wove a shoulder strap from needham fibers in 3 minutes and secured the aluminum roll to my backpack. I packed the business backpack with 5 Pandanus tectorius fruits, curcuma longa, Trametes versicolor, the bloodstained silk, remaining coconut jerky, my aluminum lunchbox, the spice tin, fire starter, a full thermos, a ballpoint pen, a USB cable, window glass shards, 2 pebbles, and a coconut shell bowl. Lin Tian wrapped the remaining seafood in banana leaves, tied them to her belt, and donned my suit jacket. To repel insects, I crushed Symbopogon citratus leaves to extract the citral-rich sap. Symbopogon citratus, significant insect repellent effect. I applied the sap to Lin Tian's calves. She shivered as my fingers brushed her skin. Her highly sensitive constitution triggered. She flushed, pressed her legs together, and let out a soft moan, looking at me with glistening eyes. Lin Tian affinity, 72% 75%. When I treated Su Man's ankles, the flight attendant stiffened as her foot sensitivity activated. Her toes curled, her face turned beet red, and she let out a muffled ah, biting her lip and turning away to hide her crimson ears. Su Man affinity, 53% 58%. Before departing, I allocated 1 free attribute point to range shooting. Range shooting LV.0.3 LV.1.3, muscle memory and aiming intuition enhanced, skill points remaining. 1. Armed with my aluminum blade, walking stick, and sling, I prepared to move. I'll lead and assist Su Man, Tian, follow closely. Stay quiet, watch where I step, and follow my orders. At 8:40, the migration began. Heading northwest, I used my system radar to track terrain within 100 meters, bypassing a red-marked wild boar trail. The journey felt like a survival game. I collected unripe musa itinerants for starch and leaves for wrapping. Spotting a Nephilium lapicium tree, I loaded my sling with a pebble. With my new LV.1.3 skill, my movements were fluid and precise. I fired. Swish, thwack. A cluster of fruit fell. I knocked down 2 more. Range shooting proficiency plus 0.2. They ate the sweet, juicy fruit on the spot. Satiety, 75%, 85%. Hydration, 95%, 98%. I gathered flexible vines for binding and plumeria flowers for their medicinal properties. They stayed hydrated by drinking water directly from tetrastigma stems. At 10:40, they reached a damp lowland. Radar showed stationary red dots, ambush predators. I led them uphill, using a branch to beat the grass and scare off any snakes. Lin Tian slipped. I caught her waist, and she instinctively leaned into my chest. Lin Tian affinity, 75%, 76%. Agility attribute, plus 0.1. At 11:20, they reached the cave terrace. I cleared the area of predators. The spring water was clean, and the women relaxed, exhausted. I ordered them to sit so I could check their feet for injuries. I grasped Lin Tiantian's ankle. As I pressed her soles, her sensitivity triggered, leaving her dazed and blissful. Brother Yunfan's hands. Feels so good. Lin Tian affinity. 76%, 77%. I moved to Su Man. As I massaged her arch and ankle, Su Man trembled violently. She flushed, her toes curling. She realized I might be doing this on purpose, yet she couldn't bring herself to mind. Her heart raced, but she felt no resentment. Su Man affinity. 58%, 60%. Reached admiration/infatuation threshold. Reward, 2 free attribute points. I added 1 to Constitution. Constitution, 5.86.8. Remaining, 1. I then spotted the problem. Both women had Haemadipsa leeches attached to their legs. Don't pull them off, I commanded calmly. I used the edge of my aluminum blade to scrape the leeches off, then applied Centella asiatica juice to stop the bleeding. Haemadipsa SPP, non-toxic, but saliva contains anticoagulants. The women felt relieved by my professionalism. Su Man affinity, 60%, 61%. Lin Tian affinity, 77%, 78%. First aid practice plus 0.1. At 12 o'clock, they settled in. I built an A-frame structure at the cave entrance, covering it with the aluminum plate to catch rainwater, which dripped into a coconut shell bowl. This is our automatic water collector, I explained. They drank coconut water, and I prepared the meat into strips. I reignited the fire using the embers from the spice tin. I set up a stone stove to boil the seafood soup and roasted the coconut strips on a flat rock. 15 minutes later, the aroma filled the cave. Lin Tian hugged my arm, asking, "Brother Yunfan, are we living here from now on?" "For now," I replied. "Once we find the others, this will be our forward base." Su Man watched me, then suggested, "International rescue should be underway. Shouldn't we prioritize signaling?" I acknowledged the reality of her point. "We will. We'll pile damp vegetation on high ground for smoke signals," I agreed. "But first, we must build a secure base. We need to be prepared for a long wait." I smirked. "If I build you a villa here, will you offer yourselves to me?" Lin Tian blushed, looking down at her clothes. Su Man turned away, her neck flushed. "We'll see if you can build the villa first." I laughed, lightening the heavy atmosphere. "I will," I said, watching the flames. "Starting with turning this cave into a home." They shared the soup as the mist cleared, sunlight filtering into the cave. After lunch, I improved the camp's water system. I roasted 2 new coconut shells over the embers to sterilize and carbonize them, increasing durability. I then approached the rain collection setup at the cave entrance. With the aluminum sheet angled by stones, I placed the 3 coconut shells, 1 old, 2 new, at the lower edge to catch runoff, adjusting them for maximum efficiency. 3 bowls triple the rain collection, I noted, assessing the simple array. Simple water collection system established. Estimated 3 to 5 liters per 24 hours during moderate rain. The rock spring was limited. This backup provided peace of mind. Hardcore tips. Cymbopogon citratus contains citral, a natural mosquito repellent. Crushed and applied to skin, it lasts 2 to 3 hours, though it is less effective against ticks and leeches. Survival trivia: never pull off a land leech directly. Use salt, alcohol, or scrape from the side to make it detach. Otherwise, the mouthparts may remain and cause infection. The cave fell silent after lunch. I observed Su Man resting with her arm properly slung, and Lin Tian, whose fingers toyed with her skirt in the firelight. She was likely missing her old life, free from the struggle for water. Checking the radar map, I saw 2 green dots, Su Man and Lin Tian, within 100 meters. No red markers. I stood up, grabbed my walking stick, and announced, "I'm checking the perimeter." Both women looked up. Outside, I moved slowly, using my stick to clear ferns and inspect the ground for tracks while scanning the canopy. The system refreshed. No red dots within 100 m. Environmental danger, low. Returning after a 10-meter sweep, I found both women watching me. "The 10-meter radius is safe?" I said, turning to Lin Tian. "Your turn." Lin Tian straightened up. "First, gather dry wood for the right side of the cave. Second," I handed her the stainless steel seasoning jar. "Wash it at the spring, fill it, and boil the water. Let it cool before pouring it into the thermos." I added sternly, "Never put the thermos directly on the fire, and don't seal boiling water inside. It will explode." Lin Tian nodded vigorously. "Understood, Brother Yunfan." I turned to Su Man. "You guard the fire. Keep it burning, but be careful." Su Man nodded, picking up a branch. "I'm gathering materials for a door. I'll be back in an hour. Shout if there's trouble." Leadership EXP plus 0.1. I stepped into the rainforest. 30 meters west, I found a dead Casuarina equisetifolia. Casuarina equisetifolia, hard wood, rot-resistant, ideal for construction. I drew my aluminum blade and began chopping. The wood was dense, requiring significant effort. Sweat dripped down my face by the 5th strike. Satiety 78%, 72%. I adjusted my breathing and continued. After 20 minutes, I had 2 1.8-meter main posts and 3 crossbeams. My arms trembled, but my grip remained firm. Strength EXP plus 0.3. I gathered Livistona leaves for roofing and coconut leaves, bundling them with wrought tan. My knot tying was smoother than yesterday. Craftsmanship proficiency plus 0.2. I harvested 15 termitomyces mushrooms near a dead tree. Nearby, I dug up 500 g of Maranta arundinacea tubers for starch. I stripped calamus bark to create high-quality natural rope. Under a fallen log, I found a deposit of clay. I collected a kilogram for pottery. Satiety 72%, 68%. Hydration 95%, 86%. I returned to the cave. Lin Tian had stacked the wood neatly, and the water was boiling over the fire. Lin Tian stood up, eyes bright, awaiting praise. "Well done," I said, noting the neat stack. Lin Tian smiled, blushing. "I followed your instructions." I nodded, checking on Su Man, who remained at her post. "Before we move in, we need to clear out the residence," I said. "Wait outside." The women complied. I located a patch of Dysphania ambrosioids. Dysphania ambrosioids, known for smoke that repels insects. I bundled the leaves and ignited them. I blew out the flame, producing thick, pungent smoke. I systematically smoked the cave, forcing the fumes into every crevice. Volatile compounds and smoke disrupt insect olfactory senses, providing repellent effects. 10 minutes later, the cave was clear. I signaled the women to return. "It's ready." The cave smelled of herbs, and the system confirmed. Environmental threat. Arthropods significantly reduced. Now for the main project. I drove the sharpened Casuarina posts into the ground and lashed the crossbeams using the cross-lashing technique from the system's manual. With the frame secure, I began the roofing. I layered Livistona leaves downward for drainage, reinforcing them with coconut leaves. My movements were fluid and efficient. I fashioned simple hinges and a latch from flexible wrought tan. The door swung smoothly. Successfully crafted simple barrier door, skill point +1. Craftsmanship proficiency plus 0.3. LV point 4.1, unallocated skill points. 2. I allocated the point. Traps and stealth LV point 0.0, LV point 1.0. A flood of knowledge regarding trap mechanics, tension calculations, trigger mechanisms, and camouflage entered my mind. Skill points. 2-1. I grabbed my aluminum blade and wood scraps, heading outside the cave. Near a game trail 15 meters east, I set a spring-loaded spear trap. I used a flexible sapling as the tension rod, attached a sharpened hardwood spear with rattan, and installed a tripwire 10 centimeters above the ground. On the west side, I utilized a natural funnel in the brush to set a rattan snare trap, tying the line to a sturdy branch. I installed a total of 3 traps. I marked the perimeter of each trap with white stones and tied blue insulation strips from a USB cable above the tripwires, a secret signal for my group. Traps in Stealth Plus 0.5, LV.1.5. For a perimeter alarm, I gathered hollow, brittle vine segments. I set 4 tripwires 15 meters around the cave, 30 to 50 centimeters off the ground. I hung the hollow vine segments on nearby trees, balancing them so the slightest touch would cause them to sway. I adjusted the wires so the vine segments rested against rocks or trunks in their natural state. I tested the western alarm. Click-clack. The vine rubbed against the rock, then struck it with a dull thud, audible through the quiet rainforest. Returning to the cave, I warned the women, I've set tripwire alarms. If you hear knocking, get inside, lock the door, and call me. Never go out to check. The women nodded, and Lin Tian whispered, understood. I designated a sanitation area 5 meters downwind, digging a 50 centimeters deep hole and screening it with banana leaves. I explained the procedure and provided a coconut shell of boiled water for hand washing. Suman added softly, hygiene is vital. Finally, I laid down dry palm leaves to create 3 simple sleeping mats. A sudden downpour began. As rain hammered the foliage, the trio retreated behind the barrier door. I observed. The aluminum sheet channeled water into coconut shells, the cave remained dry, and the firewood stayed protected. By evening, the rain stopped. Humidity spiked to 95%, and the temperature dropped to 26 degrees Celsius. I prepared dinner. Arrowroot, termitomyces, mussels, and ulva lactuca, boiled in the aluminum box. The aroma filled the cave. I toasted extra arrowroot slices over the residual fire heat. Cooking plus 0.2, LV.1.6. I blew on a spoonful of soup and fed it to Suman. She hesitated, then leaned forward and drank. It's delicious, she said, her ears turning red. Lin Tian watched them, so I fed her a piece of toasted arrowroot. Say-ah. She took it, smiling. Sweet. Thank you, Brother Yinfan. I poured water from the thermos. The water is sweet, too. Lin Tian blushed. It was the water she had boiled. During the post-meal check, I applied Centella Asiatica juice to the women's leech bites. Suman winced slightly while I checked her splint. I softened my touch. Suman affinity 61% 62%. Lin Tian affinity 78% 79%. First aid plus 0.1, LV.2.6. As I treated Lin Tian, her highly sensitive constitution caused her to shiver and moan softly when my fingers brushed her skin. I remained composed and finished treating Suman as night fell. I crafted a new wooden spear, hardening the tip over the fire. I organized my gear. Thermos, toasted arrowroot, bloodstained silk, aluminum blade, spear, and sling. At 9 p.m., I sat by the entrance with my spear. I'll keep watch. You sleep. The women complied and lay down. The fire cast flickering shadows on the walls. Deep night. On the radar map, a large red dot flashed 90 meters away, followed by a distant, thunderous roar. Then, clang crash. Metal hitting stone echoed from the west. I grabbed my spear, peering through the barrier door. I remained alert for 5 minutes. The red dot vanished. The women woke up, looking at me anxiously. It's nothing, I whispered. Probably a small animal. Go back to sleep. They eventually complied. I resumed my vigil, my eyes scanning the darkness. Whatever it was, it better not come back. Hardcore tips. Dysphania ambrosiaoid smoke repels insects, but ensure proper ventilation to avoid respiratory irritation. Survival trivia. Arrowroot is high in starch, but contains trace cyanogenic glycosides. It must be cooked thoroughly. Morning light filtered through the barrier door. I stretched, my joints popping. Stamina, 72%. I revived the fire. The women were still asleep. Armed with my spear and blade, I stepped outside, moving silently. The morning mist was thick. I checked the eastern traps. The first trap was untouched. Near the second, I smelled blood. A Reeves's muntjac was snared by its hind leg, hanging dead. Muntiacus spp. Male, 14.8 kilograms. Status: dead, broken neck. Edible. Lean meat, 22% protein. Traps in stealth plus 0.2, LV.1.7. I cut the carcass down. I had to process it immediately. Digging a 30 centimeters pit was easier now with my increased strength. I gutted the animal, burying the waist and wrapping the heart, liver, and kidneys in fig leaves. I skinned the carcass, following the system's visual guide for precision. I divided the meat and rubbed it with Cymbopogon citratus to repel insects. Cooking plus 0.1. I reset my traps, reinforcing worn rattan ropes and checking triggers. Finding 2 fresh game trails with clear hoof prints, I set 2 new snares, adjusting the tripwires to 15 centimeters and camouflaging them with leaves. Traps in stealth plus 0.2, LV.1.9. I returned with meat and suede, using Cymbopogon citratus to repel flies attracted by the scent of blood. The women were awake upon my return. Lin Tian was collecting water from a rock hollow, while Su Man neatly smoothed out their palm leaf bedding. Lin Tian cheered at the sight of the meat. I placed it by the entrance and checked the water supply. Lin Tian showed off her progress, water boiling in a steel seasoning jar and cooling in containers. I praised her, emphasizing the importance of this daily routine and maintaining the firewood pile. Lin Tian nodded, blushing. Lin Tian affinity 79%, 80%. For breakfast, I sliced a kilogram of leg meat. I boiled half with Termitomyces spp, wild banana hearts, and Cymbopogon citratus. The other half was laid on stone slabs near the fire to dehydrate into jerky. I then scraped the suede clean and rubbed it with wood ash for preservation, with Lin Tian watching curiously. I explained that this was the first step in a long process to prevent the hide from rotting in the humid climate. I hung the hide on a frame near the cave entrance to air dry. Cooking plus 0.3, LV.1.9. They ate the soup and roasted arrowroot. I naturally fed a piece of meat to Su Man. Su Man accepted it, her movements more natural, though her lashes fluttered. She whispered a thank you. Su Man affinity 62%, 63%. I treated their wounds with Centella asiatica. Lin Tian's had scabbed over, and Su Man's swelling had subsided. First aid plus 0.1, LV.2.7. I announced I would search for the person I spotted yesterday. I instructed Lin Tian to learn foraging and left Su Man to guard the fire. Outside, I taught Lin Tian to identify Biden's pilosa and Plantigo asiatica for food and medicinal use. Lin Tian took notes. I discovered red berries, Syncephalum dulcificum. The system noted they temporarily make sour foods taste sweet. I gave one to Lin Tian. She was amazed by the sweetness, even tasting it on her fingers. I tasked her with daily foraging and pocketed some berries. Back inside, I demonstrated pottery making using clay, shaping a bowl. Lin Tian tried but struggled, causing cracks. I guided her hands from behind. Lin Tian blushed, her highly sensitive constitution triggered, but she successfully shaped the clay. Craftsmanship plus 0.2, LV.4.3. I instructed her to let the pieces air dry slowly in the shade to prevent cracking. Lin Tian affinity 80%, 81%. Time to depart. I crafted a new wooden spear and allocated my last attribute point to strength. Strength 6.37.3. I felt a surge of power and tested the spear's weight. I also allocated a skill point to traps and stealth. Traps and stealth LV.1.9, LV.2.9. A wealth of knowledge on silent movement and advanced trap design flooded my mind. I geared up with my aluminum blade, spears, and a palm leaf hat. I packed essentials, a sling, water, food, and fire-starting materials. I shouldered my pack. I reminded the women to maintain the fire, keep the entrance barred, and stay hidden if they heard alarms. They agreed, and I entered the rainforest at 9 a.m. I headed northeast toward the suspected location of President Shun, moving into unfamiliar, dense terrain. Using my new skills, I navigated carefully, avoiding soft ground and masking my tracks. Traps and stealth plus 0.1, LV.3.0. I identified Antiris toxicana, noting its toxic sap. I chewed on wild erica heart for hydration and energy. Satiety 80%, hydration 78%. I collected Sabodium barometers for fire starting and medicinal herbs. My radar map alerted me to a large creature nearby. I froze, blending into the environment until it moved away. Finding a large snakeskin, I remained vigilant for a reticulated python. I monitored my status. Satiety 75%, hydration 71%, stamina 68%, high danger level. By 11 a.m., I neared the coordinates. The radar map showed a stationary green dot in a depression. I approached with extreme stealth, utilizing shadows and cover. I found a hidden rock cavity, likely the location of the green dot. However, a giant python was coiled just 5 meters from the entrance. A reticulated python over 4 meters long lay coiled on a fallen log. Its midsection was distended from a large meal, and it remained motionless with its head tucked into its coils. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting diamond-like patterns across its scales. I hid behind a massive buttress tree, my pupils constricting. The system radar displayed. Green dot, identity, President Shun. Vital signs, weak but stable. Status, suspected injury, immobile, red dot, Python reticulatus. Hostility, potential, status, postprandial digestion, reduced alertness but highly dangerous. A direct confrontation was suicide. Even a gorged python could crush ribs. However, the person in the rock crevice was likely too injured to wait. I scanned the scene. The python, the crevice entrance, my tools, and the terrain. Lemongrass might irritate, but could also provoke. A sling was useless against scales. Fire was too difficult to start in the humidity. My gaze settled on the loose rocks above the crevice, held precariously by vines and roots. A plan formed. I gripped my wooden spear. I'm going to need you to move. Hardcore tips. Wood ash tanning is an ancient method where alkaline ash breaks down fats and proteins to prevent decay, followed by oil tanning to ensure the leather remains soft and durable. Survival trivia. While gorge pythons are sluggish, they remain dangerous. Their heart rate and metabolism drop significantly during digestion, meaning they can go weeks without eating, making it a poor strategy to wait near their prey. Behind the buttress tree, I stared at the giant shadow. My heart rate hit 105. I closed my eyes, inhaling the humid air to steady myself. Panic meant death. I scanned the battlefield. The crevice entrance was partially hidden by vines. The python lay 5 meters away, its thickest part wider than my thigh, scales glistening in the light. It looked like a sleeping guard, one armed with bone-crushing power. Plan A. Use the loose rocks above to startle the snake. Plan B. Olfactory distraction. The lemongrass was a gamble, and fire was impractical. I mentally mapped my escape route, checking for obstacles, tree cover, and slope gradients. My gear was ready. The aluminum blade, a backup spear, 1 stone for my sling, and the lemongrass. The system database confirmed. Postprandial metabolism drops to 30%, prefers stillness, sensitive to vibrations. Relies on infrared and smell, can strike with 6 kilograms per square centimeter of pressure. Digestion lasts days or weeks. The bulge in its midsection confirmed it was still digesting. The window of opportunity was narrow. I knelt by a tree with gray-brown, fissured bark and broad leaves. The system identified it. Brucinetia papyrifera, paper mulberry. Bark fibers are tough, used for ancient papermaking and rope, non-toxic. I used my aluminum blade to strip the bark, revealing the milky white inner layer. I braided 3 1.5-meter strips into a makeshift rope. Sweat dripped from my chin as I worked the fibers. 2 minutes later, I had a rough but sturdy 2-meter rope. I gathered 3 sharp-edged rock fragments, the largest serving as a makeshift stone axe. Status: satiety, 73%, hydration, 70%, stamina, 65%. I popped a mystery fruit under my tongue. The sweet sensation stimulated saliva production and provided a necessary mental boost. Time to work. I cleared my retreat path, moving silently to a patch of firm, dry ground 15 meters away. I set a tripwire between two trees using rattan and my new rope, hanging hollow fruit shells at 20 centimeters high as a makeshift alarm. Traps and stealth plus 0.1 LV.3.1. Now for the rock trigger. I moved along the base of the rock wall, using my stealth skills to avoid noise. It felt like a real-life game of Assassin's Creed, with no save points. After 10 minutes, I reached the ledge above the crevice. The angle was perfect. The python, the entrance, and the target rocks were all visible. The largest rock weighed about 30 kilograms. I had to be careful not to trigger a full collapse. I tied a fist-sized hammer stone to my rope, securing it so it hung half a foot from the target vines. I fashioned a lever using a 3-meter branch and a Y-shaped fork. Pulling the lever would swing the hammer into the vines. I spent 20 minutes calculating the physics and adjusting the setup. My stamina dropped. Stamina, 61%. Hydration, 68%. I took a few sips of water, cooling my overheated body. Final check. I retreated to my position behind a large tree. The green dot for President Shun remained stable. The red dot was still digesting. I took a deep, humid breath. I attached a pull cord to the lever and pressed my back against the tree. My heart hammered. I pulled. The lever engaged, and the hammer swung in an arc. Asterisk thud. Asterisk a dull impact followed by the snapping of plant fibers. The rocks shifted, sending a shower of dirt and debris crashing down, exploding in front of the python. Success. I peeked out. The python was startled. It raised its head, yellow pupils scanning for the source of the noise, its tongue flicking rapidly to catch scents. It began to move, but with the sluggishness of a heavy meal. It seemed to dismiss the event as a natural slide, but its alertness spiked. It shifted its body, turning away from the crevice entrance to face the source of the vibration. The window was open. I bolted from behind the tree like a leopard. I moved with a low-profile sprint, stepping precisely on rocks and roots. I utilized my stealth skills to minimize noise, prioritizing speed through the quietest sections. The scent of the python and rainforest rot filled the air. My heart rate hit 140 BPM. I had 3 seconds. I ducked into a recessed opening, using my wooden spear to push aside vines before sliding inside. Glancing back, I saw the python's head turn. Its yellow vertical pupils locked onto the entrance, tongue flicking rapidly. It had sensed us and was beginning to investigate. I quickly rearranged the vines to mask the entrance, pressed my back against the cool rock, and readied my spear and aluminum blade. Outside, the sound of scales scraping against stone drew closer. I turned my attention to the interior of the recess. The space was about 5 meters deep and dim. Dry leaves crunched softly underfoot. A figure lay curled against the innermost wall. It was President Shun. Her professional suit was torn and stained with mud and dried blood. Her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were closed, casting shadows on her pale cheeks. Her left calf bore a jagged, infected wound, and her right ankle was severely swollen, the heel missing. The system identified her, President Shun. Status: unconscious, mild dehydration, starvation, sprained ankle, infected leg wound, severe exhaustion. Vital signs were weak but stable. Affinity: 0%. I checked her pulse. It was faint but rhythmic. Her breathing was shallow. I patted her cheek. Her skin was unnaturally dry. President Shun? Can you hear me? No response. I retrieved my thermos, which held 300 milliliters of water. I cradled her, noting how light she felt. Her head lolled back, completely limp. I used my finger to dab water onto her cracked lips, letting it seep into the fissures. I repeated the process 3 times. Shun let out a faint, cat-like moan. Her eyelashes fluttered, and her eyes opened slightly, though her pupils remained unfocused. Suddenly, a distinct hissing sound came from the vines at the entrance. A massive, patterned snake head blocked the light, flicking its tongue to track their heat and scent. I tensed, shielding the waking Shun behind my body. I gripped my spear and blade, calculating. The narrow space prevented the python from coiling, but if it blocked the entrance, we were trapped. I needed to create a distraction. I grabbed my fire-starting kit, golden hair fern tinder and a glass shard acting as a convex lens. Sunlight hit the floor. I placed the tinder on dry leaves, added a few drops of water to the glass shard to create a lens, and focused the beam onto the tinder. The light intensified, the tinder began to smoke, and the python's shadow loomed closer. A flame erupted, casting an orange glow in the dim space. I threw the burning tinder and leaves toward the entrance, scattering dust to create a smoke screen. Smoke billowed, accompanied by the crackling of burning plants. The python, sensitive to fire and smoke, hissed loudly and recoiled. The scraping sounds retreated. I turned to Shun, pressing the thermos to her lips. President Shun, drink slowly. Her eyes focused slightly as she swallowed instinctively. I wiped the spilled water from her chin. I'm Li Yunfan, a passenger from your flight, I said clearly. We need to leave. Confusion flickered in her eyes, replaced by alertness as she noticed her injuries. She tried to speak, but only managed a breathy sound. Can you stand? Try. She tried to rise, but her right foot gave way in pain. I caught her. Her skin was ice cold. She couldn't walk. I looked at the entrance. The fire was dying, but the smoke had bought us time. The python was still nearby. How could I evacuate an immobile survivor while being hunted by a giant snake? Shin leaned on me, her breathing ragged but her gaze sharpening. She looked at the smoke, then at me. You? Before she could finish, the heavy sound of scales on stone returned, closer than before. Hardcore tip. Brucinicia papyrifera bark fibers need to be semi-dried for cordage. Wet fibers slip, and dry ones are brittle. Survival trivia. Reticulated pythons are sluggish after eating, but can strike at 8 meters per second within a 3m range when startled. The sound of scales outside was nerve-wracking. I shielded Shun, spear pointed at the entrance. System. Heart rate 140 BPM. Stamina. 61%. Hydration. 68%. I inhaled deeply, my mind shifting into a cold, analytical state. I scanned the recess. It was 4 by 3 meters. The sandstone walls were weathered, with a deep vertical crack on the left and a 7 to 8 meter drop to the top edge. The smoke was thinning. The tinder was almost gone. The python was waiting for the smoke to clear. I accessed the system's simulation interface. Analysis. The python's infrared sensing range is 3-4.5 m. It would wait for the smoke to dissipate. The wall scan showed a climbable crack and root anchor points at the top. I had two choices: wait and risk infection and dehydration, or climb out. President Shun, I whispered. We either wait and risk your wound, or we climb out. Shun looked at me, her voice weak but firm. I can't walk. I'll carry you. Hold on tight and stay quiet. Not if you agree. She studied me for 3 seconds, the look of a CEO assessing risk. She nodded. The plan began. I prepared 3 more piles of tinder and moss, scraping the wall for more flammable material. I placed the piles strategically around the entrance. I used the glass shard and water to focus the midday sun onto the piles. Focus. Flames ignited across all 3 piles. Craftsmanship proficiency plus 0.1 LV for 0.4. Thick smoke filled the space. I tore my shirt into strips, soaking them with the remaining water to act as masks for myself and Shun. Outside, the python hissed in agitation. I checked my climbing gear. I gathered my bark rope, vine, and shoulder strap to prepare for the ascent. I used the system's complete guide to knots to tie 3 ropes together, totaling 5.5 meters, relying on muscle memory. Traps and stealth proficiency plus 0.1 LV.3.2. A tension test confirmed the rope could support 150 kilograms, sufficient for short-term use. I prepared to secure the casualty. I had Shun Qingqiu sit upright, using a piggyback method. I looped the rope under her armpits, crossed it over my chest, and secured it under her thighs. Physical contact was unavoidable. As I reached around her, I felt her stiffen. Her professional attire was ruined, revealing her undergarments. She trembled when my fingers brushed her skin but remained silent. System status: heart rate 100 BPM, alertness 60%, high pain threshold. Strength experience plus 0.1. Once secured, I told her to hold on and warned her to speak up if in pain. Shun Qingqiu buried her face in my shoulder, her scent a mix of blood and lingering cold perfume, a final vestige of her executive composure. I planned the climbing route. The radar map marked grip points: a 3 cm stone ledge at 1.2 m, a split in the crack at 2.5 m, and shrub roots at 7.8 m. Total load was 125 kilograms. I needed 3 points of contact at all times. First attempt. I climbed, but the stone ledge crumbled under my weight. I retreated, drenched in sweat. System analysis. Sandstone weathering is 2 centimeters thick. Avoids surface grips. Tool modification. I carved a notch into my wooden spear to create a temporary rock wedge. Craftsmanship proficiency plus 0.1 LV.4.5. I wedged the spear into the crack. The system confirmed it could support 50 kilograms. The climb began. I used the spear as a primary anchor, the ledge as a secondary, and my right hand to probe for new holds. Progress was slow but steady. Shin Qingxiu kept her eyes closed, her arms locked tightly around my neck, suppressing her tremors. Strength experience plus 0.1, constitution experience plus 0.1. At 4 meters, the sound of scales scraping against rock echoed from below. The python blocked the entrance, flicking its tongue to track their heat. I accelerated. The rock crack split. I lost my balance, left with only 2 points of contact. Shin Qingxiu gasped. Stamina dropped to 55%, left shoulder injury aggravated. I jammed my knee into a crevice to stabilize, narrowly avoiding a fall. I stabbed my aluminum blade into the soft sandstone to create a new grip. Agility experience plus 0.1. I continued upward. The final 2 meters were grueling. My muscles began to spasm. Clenching the rope in my teeth, I grabbed the shrub roots and hauled us onto the platform. I collapsed, gasping for air. Stamina, 48%. Hydration, 65%. Heart rate, 160 BPM. Status, dehydrated, exhausted, shoulder injury. I checked below. The python, uninterested in the vertical climb, retreated into the cave. Temporarily safe. I retrieved my tools. The blade was slightly chipped but functional. I checked Shin Qingxiu. Her leg wound had reopened, bleeding through the scab. I gathered medicinal herbs identified by the system. I crushed the herbs with the blade and bandaged her wound. First aid practice proficiency plus 0.1 LV.2.8. I gave her the last 80 milliliters of water, prioritizing her survival over my own. Shin Qingxiu sat up, pale but sharp-eyed. She observed me, my sweat-drenched clothes and bloodied hands. Li Yin Fan, she said, her voice weak but calm. Other survivors. 2 others at the base, I replied. You're the 4th. She looked at her ruined clothes and swollen ankle. She frowned, a familiar expression of professional dissatisfaction, yet she remained stoic. Her gaze lingered on my hands. Shin Qingxiu affinity, 0% 15%. I checked the radar map. The cave was 800 m away, but we were both exhausted and she couldn't walk. I spotted Epipremnum pinnatum nearby. Warning, toxic, causes irritation and swelling. I ignored it and found wild bananas, Musa itinerans. Safe, rich in water and electrolytes. I cut the stem, extracting the clear, nutrient-rich sap. I tasted it. It was safe. I offered the sap to Shin Qingxiu. She drank it with a lingering, executive grace despite her trembling hands. Hydration 70%, stamina 52%. Shin Qingxiu, dehydration relieved, alertness 75%. I planned to build a sled. As I gathered materials, Shin Qingxiu began to sway, her willpower fading. She leaned forward, whispering, "Water." As she lost consciousness, the thermos was empty. I quickly squeezed the last drops of juice from a wild banana stem into Shin Qingxiu's mouth. She swallowed weakly, her eyelashes fluttering, before leaning back against the rock wall, too exhausted to open her eyes. I silently finished the makeshift sled. I knelt, carefully cradling Shin Qingxiu's back and knees to lift her. "It'll be a bit bumpy," I whispered. Shin Qingxiu didn't respond, but she curled up instinctively and let out a muffled groan as I placed her into the litter. Her forehead rested against my sweat-drenched shoulder. I adjusted her position, cushioning her injured ankle with vines, and strapped the harness over my own weary shoulders. I glanced one last time at the dense, green forest to the northeast. I turned, leaned forward, and pushed. The sled slid over the mud, carrying the unconscious survivor slowly toward the western outpost. Hardcore tip: when building a sled, bevel and polish the front of the runners to significantly reduce drag. Survival trivia: Hypothermia is a silent killer. In humid jungles, monitor the core temperature of unconscious patients who cannot shiver to generate heat. The heat on the cliff platform felt like a wet shroud. The sled slid off the platform and down the gentle slope. System interface, stamina, 52%, hydration, 70%, status, mild dehydration, physical exhaustion, recurring left shoulder pain. Despite the polished runners, the sled snagged on a tree root 10 meters in. I grunted, digging my heels in as the harness bit into my shoulders. I checked the radar map. I navigated toward areas with sparse vegetation, following the path I had already cleared. Every meter cost me dearly. Dragging 125 kilograms through soft leaf litter felt like pulling a cart through a swamp. Sweat stung my eyes, and my shirt clung to my strained back muscles. 15 minutes passed. I had covered less than 150 meters. I leaned against a tree, gasping. System, stamina, 48%. Hydration, 66%. I needed water. I spotted a Monstera deliciosa vine with thick aerial roots. System, Monstera deliciosa aerial roots. Hydration source, non-toxic. Unripe fruit/sap contains calcium oxalate crystals. Avoid contact with mouth mucosa. I cut 3 roots with my aluminum blade. I sucked the cool, earthy liquid from the white pith. Hydration, 71%. I squeezed the 3rd root into a banana leaf cup and fed it to Xinqingqiu. She swallowed unconsciously. I wiped the excess water from her lips. Her skin was burning hot. I ate some roasted arrowroot to boost my energy. Satiety, 78%. Xinqingqiu began to tremble, a sign of hypoglycemia. She was too unconscious for solids. I mashed the arrowroot with root juice into a paste and slowly fed it to her, prying her jaw open gently. She swallowed. That's it, swallow. I whispered, then resumed the trek. 20 minutes later, a 40 cm thick rotting log blocked their path. I moved Xinqingqiu to the shade. Her face was flushed with an unhealthy heat. Wait 5 minutes, I told her. I hacked through the surrounding vines. 8 minutes later, I cleared a path, but my stamina dropped to 42%. As I resecured the harness, I noticed her ankle had slipped out. It was swollen and cold to the touch. I carefully repositioned it. Past the log, the terrain sloped downward. Soon, I heard running water. A 1.5-meter wide creek crossed their path. I waded across first to check the footing, finding stable stones. Crossing with the sled was a delicate task. I tightened the harness, lowered my center of gravity, and moved slowly. Xinqingqiu groaned as the sled hit the water, but she remained unconscious. On the far bank, I collapsed, the cold water soothing my burning legs. I spotted a cluster of Persicaria hydropiper by the bank. Medicinal herb, antibacterial, hemostatic, edible in small amounts, toxic if consumed in bulk. I gathered a handful and packed it away. My stamina began to plummet. System alerts flashed. Stamina, 40%, 38%, 36%. I wiped my face, smearing sweat and blood from Xinqingqiu's wounds. With 400 meters to go, a branch snapped to the northeast. I froze. Radar map, sun bear, subadult, 40 kilograms, curious, potentially aggressive. The red dot moved toward my position. Damn it, I hissed, pulling the sled behind a Pandanus tectorius bush. I readied my sling and wooden spear. System, stay still. Sun bears rely on scent. You are downwind. The sound of rustling bushes and heavy sniffing drew closer. My heart hammered against my ribs. The red dot hovered at 50 meters. I grabbed the last of my Symbopogon citratus, lemongrass, and scattered it around the sled. A sharp, citrusy scent filled the air. The bear hesitated for a minute, then moved northwest, fading from the radar. The crisis passed. I exhaled, realizing my back was soaked in cold sweat. Traps and stealth plus 0.1 LV.3.3. I checked on Xinqingqiu. Her condition had worsened. She was drenched in cold sweat, her breathing rapid and shallow. Her forehead was scorching. System diagnosis, Xinqingqiu, 40% consciousness, 38.7 degrees Celsius fever, 110 BPM heart rate. Localized infection causing systemic inflammation. Requires cooling and anti-infection treatment. I gritted my teeth and began emergency treatment. I used the aluminum blade to cut wild banana leaves, then used a damp cloth strip to cool her forehead, neck, and underarms. I crushed water pepper tips, mixing the spicy juice with the existing herbal paste on her leg wound to boost antibacterial effects. First aid practice proficiency plus 0.1 LV.2.9. I gathered Monstera aerial roots and painstakingly fed her water drop by drop, despite her difficulty swallowing. They had to return to the rock cave immediately. Looking at the remaining 400 meters, I realized the makeshift sled was too rough for the injured. I spotted rattan and thick-leafed ferns nearby. System ID: Blechnum oriental, non-toxic, soft, and thick leaves. I frantically harvested the ferns to pad the sled, reinforcing the joints with rattan. I ignored my bleeding fingers. Craftsmanship proficiency plus 0.1 LV.4.6. The improved sled offered better cushioning. I secured the tow rope, wrapping it around my arm to prevent slipping. The final 400 meters became a test of pure willpower. Every 50 meters, I had to stop to breathe. My stamina dropped to 35%, but I couldn't stop. President Shun's breathing was shallow, and her fever remained high at 38.5 degrees Celsius. Just 100 meters from the cave, I tripped a vine trap, triggering a loud clatter of bamboo tubes in the quiet jungle. Lin Tiantian's panicked voice rang out from the cave. "Who's there?" She sounded terrified but held her ground. I steadied my voice. "Tiantian, it's me. I have an injured person. Open the door." Lin Tiantian pulled the barrier open. Seeing me, she burst into tears but quickly wiped them away and opened the door wide. The scene inside the cave unfolded. Suman stood up, her arm in a sling. Seeing me, she sighed in relief, then frowned at the sled. I pulled the sled inside, quickly scanning the cave. The fire, water, supplies, and bedding were all secure. "Tiantian, hold the door," I rasped. "I'll handle this." With stamina at 38% and falling, I gritted my teeth and moved President Shun from the sled to the bedding. She felt light, likely due to my adrenaline. I placed her on a dry fern bed away from the draft. I collapsed against the rock wall, gasping for air, my clothes soaked in sweat, my heart pounding. Stamina, 35%. Hydration, 63%. Status, severe fatigue, near collapse. Lin Tiantian immediately grabbed a bottle of water and a bowl of cooled boiled water, rushing to my side. "Brother, drink," she said, her voice trembling but her hands steady. Suman said we must keep boiled water ready. I drank deeply, soothing my parched throat. Hydration, 75%. Lin Tiantian offered me roasted venison and arrowroot on a banana leaf. I ate ravenously. Satiety, 80%. Suman had already moved the stainless steel container off the fire to cool. I nodded, appreciating her foresight, and stood up, wincing at the pain in my shoulder. I checked President Shun. Temp 38.5 degrees Celsius, HR 105 BPM, local infection, 30% consciousness, severe dehydration. Lin Tiantian handed me a bowl of water and a clean cloth strip. I used the cloth to cool President Shun's pulse points. I tried to feed her water using a banana leaf funnel, but she couldn't swallow. I narrowed the funnel tip to a tiny opening. I let only a few drops fall onto her lips. She swallowed slightly. It worked. I maintained the rhythm, one drop at a time. Lin Tiantian watched, holding her breath. On the 7th drop, President Shun's eyelashes fluttered. "You do it," I said, my voice hoarse. "Keep the rhythm steady." Lin Tiantian nodded, her focus sharpening as she took over. I leaned back against the wall, closing my eyes to the sound of the fire and Tiantian's soft counting. I redressed the wound on President Shun's leg. The herbal paste remained effective. I finally allowed myself to relax, my body aching as I listened to the cave's quiet activity. There were 4 of them now. I needed to plan, control the infection, manage food, and find the 2 missing survivors. Tiantian approached with more water. "Brother, drink some more." I drank it all. "I'm fine," I said, smiling at her. "You did well, Tiantian." She blushed, nodded, and returned to her post, carefully feeding President Shun. I stood up and checked President Shun's forehead. Still hot, but stable. I watched her breathing and Tiantian's steady hand. "Keep it up," I said. "This is the critical phase." Tiantian continued counting, 1, 2, 3 drop. Lin Tiantian affinity 81%, 83%. Trust, responsibility, concern for me. Afternoon light softened outside. I checked the barrier and the perimeter traps. Everything was secure. I inventoried their remaining supplies: aluminum blade, sling, broken spear, and a few scraps of Symbopagon citratus. Suman asked, "Is this President Shin?" I recognize her from the flight manifest. I turned. "You know her?" "As a flight attendant, I knew the important passengers," Suman replied. "I just didn't expect to meet like this." President Shun murmured in her sleep. I looked at her sharp, familiar features. "She will pull through," I said. Hardcore tips. Monstera aerial roots are over 90% water and a reliable emergency source, but distinguish them carefully from the plant's toxic, unripe fruit. Survival trivia. When treating feverish patients, apply cooling to major blood vessels, neck, armpits, groin, for 30% higher heat dissipation efficiency. The air in the rock cave was thick and humid. I leaned against the wall, chest heaving. My system interface flashed a warning. Stamina, 35%. I was nearing the brink of collapse. Lin Tiantian offered me cold, greasy roasted diker meat. I forced myself to swallow it mechanically. Satiety, 85%. Hydration, 78%. My stats rose slightly, but my stamina remained stagnant. My left shoulder throbbed with every breath, and my palm was bleeding from rope friction. System scan. Mild left deltoid strain. Limit load for 48 hours. Right palm abrasion, 0.3 millimeters depth. No infection. Keep clean. I applied Centella asiatica juice from a banana leaf packet to my palm, the coolness easing the pain. I couldn't rest yet. I stood up, legs trembling, and approached President Shun. Body temp, 38.4 degrees Celsius, 0.1. Heart rate, 102 BPM, 3. Localized infection, gram-positive bacteria. Consciousness, 25%. Assessment, cooling is effective but slow. Needs anti-inflammatory support and hydration. I knew gram-positive infections could lead to systemic inflammation. Shun was at a critical juncture. I checked my dwindling supplies. A few leaves of Biden's pilosa, a pinch of planago, and almost no Trametes versicolor or curcuma longa left. Tiantian, I rasped. Keep feeding her water. Check her forehead temperature every 10 minutes against your own. Lin Tiantian nodded, clutching the banana leaf. I will, Chief Steward. I turned to Su Man. Keep that water at a low boil. I need sterile hot water. Su Man, despite her injured arm, used her left hand to adjust the fire, keeping the water at 95 degrees Celsius. I checked my gear. My wooden spear was chipped, my sling had one stone left, and my aluminum blade was slippery with sweat. With stamina at 35%, venturing out was risky, but I needed medicinal herbs. I planned a 20-minute search within the safe zone. I'm staying near the entrance, I told them. Call me if anything changes. Lin Tiantian looked worried. You're going out. To find medicine. Physical cooling isn't enough. I opened the barrier, letting in the humid air. I'll be back in 20 minutes. The jungle outside was like a steam room. I checked the tripwire spear trap. It was undisturbed. My radar map showed the immediate area was mostly unexplored. I began searching the vegetation. Near a rotting log, I spotted a cluster of small mushrooms. System scan. Campanumia lancifolia, whole plant medicinal. Properties, sweet, neutral. Efficacy, clears heat, promotes blood circulation, detoxifies. Contains triterpenoid saponins, effective against purulent infections and high fever. Non-toxic, young leaves edible. I carefully harvested the plants, preserving the roots for regrowth. I collected about 20 plants, packing them in banana leaves. Craftsmanship, plus 0.1 LV.4.7. I moved to a water seep near the cave. System scan. Perosia lingua, whole plant medicinal. Properties, bitter, cool. Efficacy, diuretic, clears lung heat, stops bleeding. Contains flavonoids and triterpenes, effective for infections and trauma. I harvested 2 palm-sized portions, leaving enough for the colony to survive. Heading west, I found a Canarium album tree with hardened amber resin. Resin, olive gum, medicinal. Efficacy, astringent, stops bleeding, promotes healing. Used for ulcers and burns. Fruit is rich in vitamin C. I knocked down 5 green fruits and scraped off some resin. My stamina dropped to 30%. Fatigue was setting in. On the way back, I spotted a fragrant herb. Mentha haplocalyx, whole plant medicinal. Properties: pungent, cool. Efficacy: clears wind heat, anti-inflammatory, analgesic. I grabbed a handful. Perception: plus 0.1, LV.6.1. I hurried back, my legs heavy with exhaustion. Back at the cave, Lin Tian was still carefully dripping water into Shen's mouth. "Brother," she whispered. She moved her eyelids, but she's still hot. System check. Temp 38.3 degrees Celsius. Cooling was working, but too slowly. I collapsed by the fire, spreading out the herbs. Su-Man moved the boiling water over. "A flat stone?" I requested. Lin Tian quickly brought one from outside. I sterilized my aluminum blade and stone slab with boiling water. I blanched the Campanumia lancifolia, Perosia lingua, and mint leaves briefly to preserve their medicinal properties, then laid them on a clean banana leaf. I simmered 10 Campanumia plants, a handful of Perosia, and a pinch of mint in 200 milliliters of boiling water over the edge of the fire. I monitored the system timer, keeping the liquid at a gentle simmer for 15 minutes until it turned a brownish green and emitted a bitter, minty aroma. I mashed the remaining herbs and unripe olives on a stone slab, mixing them with softened olive resin to create a thick, dark green paste. After cooling the decoction, I tasted a drop to confirm its safety and efficacy via the system. I signaled Lin Tian to support President Shen's head, then took a mouthful of the bitter medicine. Lin Tian blushed as I pressed my lips to President Shen's, slowly feeding her the liquid until she swallowed. After several rounds, the 150 milliliters dose was finished. First aid practice, plus 0.1 LV.3.0. The level up granted me intuitive knowledge on managing unconscious patients, allowing me to perform the remaining tasks with newfound precision. I replaced the dressing, noting the wound's reduced inflammation, and rebandaged it with a clean strip of cloth. Finally, I wiped President Shen's forehead and wrists with mint juice to help lower her fever. Exhausted, I slumped against the wall. An hour later, the system showed improvement. Temperature: 37.9 degrees Celsius, 0.5. Heart rate: 95 BPM, 7. Consciousness: 35%. Seeing President Shen's breathing stabilize and her fever recede, the tension in the cave eased. Lin Tian watched me, her eyes wide as she took in the discarded herbs and my mud-streaked, sweat-drenched face. "Brother," she whispered in awe. "You're amazing. Are you a doctor?" I paused while wiping my hands. Su-Man interjected softly, her gaze filled with genuine admiration. "Not a doctor. Even a doctor would struggle to identify and use wild herbs this skillfully. This is professional-grade emergency judgment." I drank some water, my expression weary and indifferent. "Medical school doesn't teach jungle medicine," I replied lazily. "I'm just a laborer. I used to move code, now I move wood. It's all just following the manual." Lin Tian nodded, feeling even more admiration, while Su-Man smiled, sensing my humble strength. System: Lin Tian affinity 83%, 86%. System: Su-Man affinity 63%, 68%. Reward: 3 free attribute points. I opened my attribute panel and made my choice. I allocated 1 point to strength, 7.5, 8.5, and 1 point to constitution, 6.9, 7.9. I held 1 point in reserve. A surge of warmth flooded my body, repairing my strained shoulder and reinforcing my core, replacing my tremors with a sense of stability. My breathing deepened as my constitution improved, significantly boosting my body's recovery efficiency. Stamina: 28%, 45%. Status: moderate fatigue/recovering. I exhaled, my mental clarity returning. I sat up straighter, no longer needing to lean heavily against the wall. As night fell, hunger set in. I inventoried our meager supplies: 300 g of roasted diker ribs, arrowroot slices, and 5 rambutan fruits. I grilled the meat over the fire, seasoning it with the last of the Cymbopogon citratus, filling the cave with a mouth-watering aroma. I gave the tenderest ribs to Lin Tian, and Su-Man Lin Tiantian tore off a piece and held it to my lips, insisting I eat first. I took the meat, accidentally brushing her fingers with my lips, causing her to blush and retreat in shyness. Lin Tiantian affinity 86%, 87%. Suddenly, President Shun stirred, whispering, "Water." Lin Tiantian rushed over with a banana leaf funnel, and President Shun swallowed several times. Consciousness 40%. As night deepened, the tropical sky revealed a brilliant, star-filled galaxy. I sat at the cave entrance, and Lin Tiantian immediately snuggled against my arm. Su-Man moved closer as well, maintaining a respectful distance. "It's New Year's Eve," Lin Tiantian remarked, looking at the stars. I replied, "Our gala tonight is a surround sound performance of crickets, frogs, and wild beasts." Su-Man asked quietly, "Do you think we'll ever go home?" I looked at them, a confident smirk on my face. "If we can't go back, we live," I stated firmly. "And we'll live better. Once I build you a villa with a hot spring, you'll have to figure out how to repay your chief engineer." Lin Tiantian blushed and playfully punched my arm. Lin Tiantian affinity 87%, 88%. Su-Man smiled gently. "We'll be looking forward to it, Mr. Li." Su-Man affinity 68%, 69%. Charisma/leadership plus 0.17.7. Around 11 p.m., trouble struck. President Shun began coughing violently, her body convulsing with chills. I rushed over to hold her down. She opened her eyes, though they remained unfocused. She rasped, "So cold." I ordered, "Tiantian, get my jacket." Su-Man, stoke the fire. Despite the jacket and the fire, President Shun continued to shiver uncontrollably. I checked the system. Temperature 37.9 degrees Celsius, shivering causing rapid heat loss. It was a post-infection immune response, but her internal thermostat was failing. Without hesitation, I lay down beside her and pulled her into my arms, using my body heat to warm her. Physical contact is the most efficient heat transfer, I explained calmly to the others. She needs a stable heat source. Lin Tiantian pouted, watching the two huddled together. Seeing Shun Qingqiu's pale face and shivering, her jealousy vanished, replaced by concern. Su-Man paused, nodded in understanding, and tactfully looked away. I ignored the distraction. The intimate contact and the soft curves pressed against me triggered a primal reaction, which I suppressed through sheer willpower and physical control. Shun Qingqiu's shivering subsided as she instinctively curled into my warmth, resting her forehead against my neck. I wrapped my arm around her waist, securing her firmly, my palm resting on her uninjured side. Shun Qingqiu let out a soft, involuntary moan as my touch grazed her sensitive waist, causing her body to tremble. Her eyelids fluttered, failing to focus, but she weakly gripped my hand. Shun Qingqiu affinity 15%, 25%. Constitution plus 0.18.0 system. Infection-induced shivering has eased. Stable heat source reduces energy consumption, aiding the immune system. A long, shrill, beastly howl echoed from deep within the jungle. I looked toward the cave entrance, eyes sharp. My system radar showed no red dots within 100 meters. The sound originated at least 100 meters away. I remained still. Lin Tiantian woke up, instinctively clinging to my back and wrapping an arm around my waist. Su-Man woke, gripping a branch. Seeing my calm posture, she exhaled and lay back down, though she remained alert. The fire crackled. Shun Qingqiu's breathing steadied against my heartbeat. The howl did not repeat. 2025 arrived in the silence of the cave. Hardcore tips. Olive leaf extract contains oleuropein, a terpene compound effective against gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria, traditionally used in tropical skin ointments. Survival trivia. Shivering during a fever indicates a rapid rise in core temperature. Avoid sweating it out. Instead, provide warmth, hydration, and monitor temperature closely. Morning light pierced the cave's darkness. I woke to a numb left arm, still cradling Shun Qingqiu. I checked my system interface. Stamina, 73%. Left deltoid strain, healed. Right palm abrasion, 98% healed. My 8.0 constitution accelerated recovery. I flexed my arm, replacing numbness with muscle soreness. Shun Qingqiu felt warm. System scan. Temp, 37.2 degrees Celsius. Heart rate, 78 BPM. Infection, subsided. Consciousness, 65%. Her wounds looked better, and her complexion had improved. I carefully withdrew my arm, wincing at the pins and needles sensation. I sat up, stretching my stiff joints. Lin Tian slept behind me, clutching my shirt. Su Man slept on the other side. I adjusted the jacket over them and invested my remaining free attribute point into strength. Strength, 8.59.5. A surge of explosive power flooded my limbs. My muscles felt tempered like steel, and the lingering stiffness vanished, replaced by a sense of heightened capability. Stamina, 73%, 80%. I stood, stepping onto the dry rock floor. The fire was dying. Morning light filtered through the casuarina and Livistona screen. I checked the screen and the 4 tripwire alarms. East, tripwire intact, bamboo tube undisturbed. South, intact. West, slight displacement due to dew-soaked vines, no trigger. North, intact. The tripwire spear trap on the east path remained set and ready. I turned to check the snares. Lin Tian sat up, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, brother," she murmured, hugging my waist. "How is Sister Shen?" "Fever's gone," I said. "Get water." Su Man, fire. Su Man woke instantly, blowing life into the embers until a flame caught. Lin Tian filled 2 coconut shells from the rock hollow. "The water is still clear, Brother Yin Fan." "Good," I said, grabbing my pack. Checking the western traps. I stepped out. The morning air was cool and misty. Radar showed no threats. At the first snare, I found success. A Burmese hare hung suspended by its leg, suffocated. Weight, 3.2 kilograms. Meat, safe, high protein. Fur, useful. Condensed into 1461, I reset the snare. The third trap showed signs of a struggle, but no catch. I adjusted the snare height to 15 centimeters for better accuracy and camouflaged it. Traps and stealth, plus 0.1 LV.3.4. Back at the cave, Lin Tian cheered at the sight of the rabbit. I processed the game with my aluminum blade, my movements steady and precise. I salvaged the hide, treating it with wood ash to preserve it. I butchered the meat, storing the organs and burying the waste to avoid attracting predators. Craftsmanship, plus 0.1 LV.4.8. Inside, Shun Qingqiu's eyes fluttered open. She focused on me, her gaze sharpening. Memories of the night returned, the cold, the warmth of my embrace. She blushed, attempting to sit up with professional composure. A sharp pain in her ankle forced her back down. I intervened. I scooped her up effortlessly, my 9.5 strength making her feel weightless, and propped her against the rock wall. "Don't move," I said calmly. "Fever's gone, but you're weak." I held the warm water to her lips. Shun Qingqiu hesitated, then drank from my hand. The warm water soothed her throat, and she swallowed repeatedly. Shun Qingqiu affinity, 25%, 30%. System. Shun Qingqiu has reached initial trust. Reward, 1 free attribute point. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raspy, eyes averted. "I owe you again." I smirked, checking her swollen ankle. "President Shun, dead is just a number. For now, you're the patient and I'm the nurse. Just listen to me." I removed the old dressing. The wound was no longer inflamed or purulent. I expertly reapplied a fresh paste of Campanumia lancifolia and Perosia lingua. To bandage her, I tilted her body, my left hand naturally supporting her waist. Shun Qingqiu shuddered, a soft, sweet moan escaping her throat. Her cold, arrogant facade crumbled as her body went limp. I paused, glancing up to see her face flushed and her eyes darting away in panic. Maintaining my composure, I let my palm linger on her soft waist for a heartbeat longer than necessary before finishing the bandage. "Is it injured here too?" I asked quietly. "No," she hissed through gritted teeth, neck and collarbone flushed with shame, though she was too weak to resist. Shun Qingqiu affinity, 30%, 40%. First aid practice, plus 0.1 LV.3.1. Breakfast time. I roasted rabbit leg over the fire, then sat beside Shun Qingqiu with a tender piece of meat. "President Shun, open up." I held the meat to her lips. Embarrassed by Lin Tian and Su Man's presence, She struggled with her pride. I can do it myself. Can your shaking hands hold anything? I pressed the meat closer. Or do you want me to feed you the more efficient way from yesterday? Burning with shame, she yielded to my authority and took a small bite. Shin Qingxiu affinity, 40%, 41%. I patiently fed her. I then shredded the other leg for Su Man, whose right arm was injured. Chief, eat up. Su Man struggled with her left hand, so I naturally used chopsticks to feed her. Su Man smiled softly, leaning in to accept the food. Thank you, Mr. Li. You're always so thoughtful. I ate while feeding Lin Tian, who happily accepted the meat and occasionally tried to feed me in return. Lin Tian affinity, 88%, 89%. Su Man affinity, 69%, 70%. After breakfast, I announced, it's New Year's Day. Our goal, improve our living conditions, find stable food, and solve our hygiene issues. The women's eyes lit up. At 11 a.m., I and Lin Tian set out. I carried my wooden spear, sling, and aluminum blade. She carried a coconut bowl and a stick. With the radar map active, we explored the southwest slope. We found wild yams, which I noted must be cooked thoroughly to remove saponins. They discovered toxic seeded but edible screw pine fruits, rich in lycopene. By a stream, I harvested cattails for food and weaving material. They also gathered fern fronds and 2 green guavas. As I taught her to identify plants, Lin Tian tugged my sleeve. Brother, look. A nest at the base of a bush held 6 speckled eggs. They took 4, leaving 2. Perception, plus 0.1, LV.6.2. From a limestone ledge, I spotted a reflective area a kilometer away, likely a wetland. I noted the location on my system map. Before returning, I gathered mint and mugwort-like plants for their insect-repelling properties. Suddenly, a red dot flashed on the radar map, 90 meters to the northwest. It appeared and vanished instantly. I tensed, pulling Lin Tian behind me and leveling my spear. After a minute of silence, the dot didn't reappear. Likely a passing beast. We returned to the rock cave. Stamina, 65%, 60%. I hydrated and ate. With my 8.0 constitution, I recovered quickly. Stamina, 60%, 70%. In the afternoon, I explored the cliff above the cave. Using my 6.6 agility, I climbed 15 meters up to a cluster of hanging vines. Behind them, I felt a warm, humid breeze. I squeezed into a 10 square meter natural chamber containing a stone pool. The pool was filled with steaming, crystal clear water. Water temp, 42 degrees Celsius. Analysis, rich in sulfur, calcium, and magnesium, weakly alkaline, sterile. Note, promotes circulation, aids healing, do not drink. A natural hot spring. I returned to announce the New Year's gift. The women were stunned. Lin Tian jumped onto me. Really? We can bathe. The desire for cleanliness was overwhelming. I immediately cleared the path, built stone steps, and fashioned privacy screens from leaves. At dusk, the bathing began. I started with Shun Qingxiu, using a soft, tan suede cloth and warm spring water. I wiped her down with professional, clinical precision, though the intimacy of the contact was undeniable. Shun Qingxiu was initially rigid, but relaxed under my steady touch, her face remaining flushed. When I reached her waist, she shivered involuntarily, her breathing hitching. I whispered near her ear, "Relax, it's almost over." Shun Qingxiu affinity, 41%, 46%. Next was Su Man. When I began cleaning her feet and ankles, she gasped. Su Man tensed, her toes curling, unable to pull away due to her injured arm. I gripped her ankle firmly. "Don't move, Chief. I need to check for blisters or cuts." I became extremely gentle, carefully cleaning her feet while avoiding her ticklish spots. Su Man flushed as I gently handled her, her voice barely a whisper. Thank you for the trouble." Su Man affinity, 70%, 73%. I used a banana leaf funnel to shower Lin Tian with warm spring water. She let out a delighted squeal from behind her makeshift curtain. As I dried her with warm buckskin, she hugged my waist, burying her face in my chest. "Brother Yunfan, Happy New Year. With you here, this place doesn't seem so scary anymore." I suppressed my physical reaction with great effort. Lin Tian affinity, 89%, 91%. night fell, and the four sat by the campfire, refreshed. Dinner was a rich rabbit stew with wild yam and red GAC fruit pulp, served with roasted cattail stems and wild jungle fowl eggs. It was the most hopeful, real meal they had eaten since being stranded. I raised my coconut shell bowl. To 2026, to our survival, and to us four. The goal remains, live better. Next step, build our hot spring villa. The women clinked their bowls against mine, their eyes filled with renewed hope and reliance. Hardcore tips. GAC fruit seeds are toxic, but the ripe pulp is rich in lycopene and vitamin A, serving as a vital nutritional supplement. Survival trivia. Natural hot springs often contain sulfides that inhibit skin bacteria, aiding wound healing. Limit soaking to 20 minutes to prevent heat exhaustion. Dawn light filtered into the cave. I woke, my system HUD appearing. Stamina, 78% satiety, 85% left shoulder strain, 95% healed right palm abrasion, 100% healed. My 8.0 constitution provided impressive recovery, though not instant. After 2 days of rest and protein, my injuries were nearly gone. I flexed my left shoulder. The soreness from yesterday's climbing had faded. Lin Tian was still clinging to me like an octopus, her breathing steady. I turned my head carefully. President Shun was resting on my right arm, her hair spread across the bedding. The system scanned her. Body temp, 36.9 degrees Celsius. Heart rate, 72 BPM. Infection, cleared right ankle sprain, 60% reduced swelling, limited mobility. Her inflammation had vanished, and color had returned to her pale cheeks. I slowly withdrew my arm, wincing at the pins and needles sensation. I sat up, my joints popping. Su-Man slept soundly across the fire, which kept the cave at a comfortable 22 degrees Celsius. Daily routine began. I checked the cave entrance and the 4 vine tripwire alarms. Everything was intact, though one wire had sagged slightly from dew. Trap check. The tripwire spear trap on the east path remained untriggered. On the west side, the first snare was empty, but the second had a catch. A male red jungle fowl was caught by the neck, suspended and suffocated. System scan. Species, red jungle fowl, Gallus gallus. Ancestor of the domestic chicken. Weight, 1.5 kg. Meat. Safe, high-protein feathers. Useful for fletching. I reset the snare and checked the others. One showed signs of a small rodent that was too light to trigger the trap. Traps and stealth. Plus 0.1 LV. 3.5. I returned to the cave to process the bird. I bled the bird quickly with my aluminum blade to ensure meat quality, then boiled water for plucking. Su-Man was already heating water. I set my own container on the granite stove. At 65 degrees Celsius, I dipped the bird and plucked it clean in under 10 minutes. I gutted it carefully, saving the organs and burying the waste far from the water source. I butchered the bird into legs, breasts, wings, and the carcass. I saved the flight feathers for arrows and collected the down for insulation. Cooking. Plus 0.1 LV. 2.0. Inside, the others were waking up. President Chen opened her eyes. Morning, I said, entering with the meat. Extra food today. President Shun tried to sit up, but winced at her ankle pain. I stepped in, lifting her effortlessly with my 9.5 strength and propping her against the cave wall. Stay still, I commanded, checking her ankle. You're still on the recovery list. Su-Man handed me warm water. I held the cup to Shun's lips. She drank hesitantly. President Shun affinity, 46%, 47%, morning care began. I examined Shun's ankle, swelling down by half, and her leg wound, which showed healthy granulation tissue. System. Infection cleared, tissue repair in progress. I cleaned the wound, applied a poultice of Campanumia lancifolia and Perosia lingua, and re-bandaged it professionally. I then checked Su-Man's arm and forehead, replacing the dressing with fresh leaves. Lin Tiantian's minor scratches had already healed. First aid practice, plus 0.2 LV. 3.3 President Shin affinity, 47%, 49%, Su-Man affinity, 73%, 75%, breakfast time. I grilled chicken skewers over the fire and set the rest to stew with wild yams. The aroma of roasting meat and yam soup filled the cave. I tore off a piece of tender chicken breast and sat beside President Shun. Time for protein, President Shun. I held the meat to her lips. President Shun watched Su Man tending the fire and Lin Tiantian grooming feathers, her jaw tight. I can do it myself. Save your energy, President Shun, I replied, brow raised. The calories you save feeding yourself are enough to grow 3 millimeters of new tissue. Shun flushed to her neck, glaring weakly. She eventually relented, bowing her head to take the chicken from my hand. I placed a leaf of deboned meat near Su Man. Help yourself, Chief Purser. Ask if you need anything. Su Man picked up a piece with her left hand, maintaining her composure. You've already done so much, she said, her gaze softening as she ate. I ate a piece of chicken, then fed a juicy strip to Lin Tiantian, who took it like a fledgling. She happily reciprocated, offering me the perfect piece from her own portion. Brother Yinfan, this is delicious. Try it. After the meal, I announced, it's our 6th day. I'm heading out to search for other survivors. Shun looked serious. My security consultant, Tang Zhong, was on the flight. If she's alive, she's a formidable asset. Su Man added, and a quiet young writer named Chinimo. I recalled the sharp-eyed woman with silver-streaked hair and the hooded, socially anxious ghost hiding in the corner. I'll scout the wreckage in the southwest wetlands. Lin, you assist Shun and Su. Also, you're my pottery apprentice. Try making some simple cups or plates with Su Man today. Shun nodded. I'll learn, too. Su Man smiled. We'll leave it to you, Teacher Lin. Lin beamed with pride. I'll teach you everything Brother Yinfan taught me. Affinity, Lin 92%, Shun 50%, Su 76%. Preparations began. Needing better weapons, I decided to craft a bow, arrows, spears, and an otlotl. I accessed the system's blueprints for primitive archery and leverage-based throwing tools. Material gathering commenced. Bow. I selected a straight, 5-centimeter thick Borneo ironwood sapling near the cave. Using my aluminum blade and LV 4.8 craftsmanship, I shaped a 1.6-meter bow stave in under 10 minutes. String. I twisted soaked rattan fibers into a tight 1.8-meter cord. Arrows. I fire-hardened 6 70-centimeter bamboo shafts. Using heated pine resin mixed with charcoal as glue, I attached red junglefowl feathers, reinforcing them with rattan strips. Spear. I fire-hardened a 2.2-meter Borneo ironwood pole. Otlotl. I carved a 40-centimeter piece of ironwood, creating a precise socket for the spear, but in a comfortable grip. Focused, I used my LV 4.8 craftsmanship to master the leverage mechanics projected by the system. I heat-treated the bow and otlotl to set their shapes. Testing the bow, I found a 30 pounds draw weight, easy for my 9.5 strength. The otlotl launch was sharp and powerful. Craftsmanship, plus 0.3 LV, 5.1. First-time crafting, primitive bow and arrows skill point, plus 1. First-time crafting, otlotl skill point, plus 1. I upgraded ranged shooting to LV 2.4. Muscle memory for aiming, breathing, and ballistics flooded my mind. I upgraded craftsmanship to LV 6.1. I gained an intuitive grasp of material structure and spatial perception. I added the final free attribute point to agility. Agility 6.67.6. My reflexes sharpened, and my movements became noticeably faster and more precise. System efficiency optimized, crafting speed and precision increased. Gear ready. I packed chicken, my blade, glass shards, extra rattan, and a thermos. I wore a Livistona hat. I carried the spear and otlotl, with my bow and quiver slung across my back. System radar showed 3 green dots at the cave, no threats. Stay alert. I'll be back by dusk, I told the group. I stepped into the jungle. With 7.6 agility and 8.0 constitution, I moved silently and efficiently through the terrain. Stamina, 81%. I headed southwest, moving into the unexplored gray zone on the system map. I gathered resources along the way. I found wild bananas, eating them for satiety despite their astringency. Satiety, 88%, hydration, 80%. I harvested 2 Ganoderma applanatum for their medicinal properties. I reached a clear stream. System, water is physically clean, moderate microbial risk, boiling recommended. Relying on my 8.0 constitution, I drank directly, finding it refreshing. Hydration, 98%. I ate some ripe bacoria fruit for vitamins and hydration. Satiety, 90%, hydration, 100%. I collected Costus speciosus roots for their anti-inflammatory medicinal use. I spotted a squirrel and fired an arrow. The shot was fluid, but missed by a hair's breadth. I retrieved the arrow carefully, rotating it to avoid damaging the shaft against the tree fibers, then checked the arrowhead and fletching before stowing it. Range shooting proficiency, plus 0.1 LV.2.5. I lowered my profile, breathing deeply to minimize my presence. My eyes scanned the forest gaps while my ears filtered out ambient noise to detect any anomalies. Traps and stealth proficiency, plus 0.1 LV.3.6, approaching target area. The vegetation shifted to moisture-loving ferns and herbs. The air grew stiflingly humid. System, ambient temp, 30 degrees Celsius, feels like 34 degrees Celsius, humid. This indicated a transition from rainforest to wetland. I gripped my spear and otlotl, senses heightened to detect any threat. The radar showed no red hostile dots, only occasional yellow resource markers. I pushed aside a giant alocasia leaf, revealing the view ahead. A reed-fringed swamp, roughly the size of 2 basketball courts, appeared. Water birds scattered as I approached. As I prepared to observe, my radar suddenly pinged. A green dot appeared 90 meters to the northwest. 2 red dots materialized instantly, closing in on the green one in a clear pincer maneuver. My muscles coiled with tension. The green dot was likely a teammate, Tang Zheng or Technician Chen. The red dots were hostile creatures. No time for analysis. I channeled my 7.6 agility into a low-profile sprint, drawing an arrow as I moved. I ghosted toward the conflict. Hardcore tip. The 120-degree helical angle of arrow fletching creates a gyroscopic effect, stabilizing flight. Survival trivia. In high humidity, sweat doesn't evaporate, leading to rapid dehydration. Drink at least 500 milliliters of water hourly to avoid a 20% drop in reaction time. I moved like a drawn bow. My 7.6 agility allowed me to sprint silently over slippery, rotting leaves, stepping only on thick moss. System HUD. Stamina, 76%, 73%. Heart rate, 102-118 BPM. Danger, high. 20 meters ahead, I heard boar grunts and the sound of a struggle. I glided forward like a shadow. After 60 meters, I paused by a tree to catch my breath, spotting some smooth, red, ping-pong-sized fruits. I grabbed 3 and ate them. The fruit was crisp, sweet, and rose-scented, instantly soothing my parched throat. Satiety, 90%, 92%. Hydration, 100%, 98%. System, Syzygium jambos, edible fruit, rich in vitamin C. Do not chew the toxic seeds. I spat out the pit and sprinted the final 30 meters. Hiding behind a giant alocasia leaf, I peered into the fray. Target confirmed. Tang Zheng, her hair matted with mud and blood, leaned against a tree. Her left arm hung limp, and she gripped a sharpened wooden stake in her right. She was in bad shape. Her tactical vest was torn, revealing a deep gash on her shoulder. Despite her exhaustion and injuries, her eyes burned with cold, predatory intent. 2 subadult wild boars circled her. They were 70 centimeters tall, weighing 70 to 80 kilograms, with coarse brown fur and 10 centimeters tusks. A classic pincer attack. The larger one had a torn ear, Tang Zheng's handiwork. I readied my bow. I knelt, using my knee to stabilize my aim at the larger boar's neck. The system projected a green trajectory line with wind and humidity compensation. I released the string. Thwack! The arrow buried 15 centimeters into the boar's neck. It shrieked and turned its gaze toward me. Aggro shifted. I stood, shouting to Tang Zheng, and fired a second, hurried shot that missed. The boar charged me, tusks lowered. I didn't retreat. I grabbed my otlotl and hooked it to my spear. As the boar closed to 5 meters, I pivoted, channeling my 9.5 strength. Whoosh! The spear flew like a gray shadow. It pierced the boar's shoulder, pinning it as the beast collapsed. I didn't hesitate. I lunged, driving my aluminum blade into the boar's carotid artery, twisting the blade to widen the wound. Blood sprayed my face as the boar went limp. First solo kill of a large, dangerous creature. Skill point, +1. The fight lasted 8 seconds. Tang Zheng seized the opening. As the second boar was distracted, she drove her stake into its eye, then dodged its frantic swipe. I arrived. I retrieved my spear and drove it into the second boar's heart. The beast collapsed with a final grunt. Silence returned to the jungle. I cleaned my spear and turned to Tang Zheng. She held her left shoulder, face pale and sweating, yet stood perfectly straight. As they closed to 3 meters, a strange scent reached me. It wasn't perfume or flowers. It smelled like fresh lychee mixed with a warm, milky sweetness, intensified by the heat radiating from her sweat-dampened neck and collarbone. I paused. I inhaled deeply. The sweet scent was surprisingly soothing, calming my frayed nerves after the fight. It was a stark, fascinating contrast to her icy demeanor. Tang Zheng stared at me, eyes sharp with suspicion. "Who are you? Why help me?" I replied, wiping blood from my face. "President Shin's companion. She's at our safe base." Tang Zheng's expression shifted instantly. Her icy guard crumbled, replaced by relief and urgency. "President Shin is alive? Thank God." Tang Zheng affinity, 5%, 15%. "She's alive, but injured. Your shoulder is dislocated. It needs resetting immediately to prevent further swelling." Tang Zheng nodded. "Sit down, back against the tree." She complied. I knelt, gripping her left wrist and elbow. "It will hurt. Bear with it." "Understood." Using the standard traction-counter-traction method, I braced my foot against her armpit and pulled her arm steadily. A clear click echoed. Tang Zheng shuddered and groaned, sweat pouring down, but she didn't scream. I let go. "Try moving it." She tested the shoulder. The joint was back in place. She looked at me with newfound curiosity. "You know how to do this?" "Just following the manual." I wiped my hands, my first aid practice proficiency rising to LV 3.5. Tang Zheng affinity, 15%, 25%. The proximity during the procedure made that intoxicating lychee milk scent even stronger. "There's one more person," I said, stepping back. "Technician Shun, a quiet girl with glasses." "Seen her?" Tang Zheng pointed west. "She ran that way. I heard large feline tracks and cubs, so I didn't pursue." I checked my system radar. Only my and Tang Zheng's signals remained nearby. Chen was out of range. I weighed my options. Tang Zheng needed rest. The boar carcasses needed processing to avoid attracting predators, and the feline threat made searching for Chen too risky. "Back to the base first. We'll process the meat and stabilize your shoulder. We'll plan for Chen later." Tang Zheng agreed. I bled the boars efficiently to preserve the meat. I harvested about 40 kilograms of prime cuts, including legs and loin. I also salvaged the hides for gear and the tusks for tools. I began building a makeshift sled. Using hardwood branches and vines, I fashioned a frame to secure the meat. The task took 20 minutes. Craftsmanship LV 6.3. They departed. With my 9.5 strength, I pulled the sled easily. I offered my arm to Tang Zheng. "Lean on me." She hesitated, then took my arm. They moved northeast. At the creek, I shared my water. Hydration, 95%, 100%. She drank deeply, her scent drifting with every movement. I washed the blood from my face. I refilled my bottle. I spotted Enant Javanica nearby. I shared the crisp, slightly bitter greens with Tang Zheng. Satiety, 92%, 94%. Further on, I found Philanthus emblica. The fruit was intensely sour. Seconds later, a sweet aftertaste bloomed. It was rich in vitamin C and great for the throat. "Eat these," I said, handing her some. "They help with thirst." She tried one, surprised by the pleasant aftertaste. As they walked, her scent continued to drift toward me. It was a strange, intoxicating contrast to her sharp, wounded exterior. "How is President Shun? Is the base safe?" Tang Zheng asked. I summarized our situation at the rock cave. Tang Zheng studied me. "Li, your combat style is strange." "Oh, your archery is amateur, but your close-quarters combat, the speed, the power, the reaction time, it's not normal." She pressed. "It's pure, raw instinct." "What did you train in?" I smiled, anticipating the question. "Just the gym," I joked. "I built stamina from stress and survival instincts from dealing with demanding clients." I adjusted the sled effortlessly, my 9.5 strength making the heavy load seem weightless. I'd never seen a wild boar before today. I just aimed, charged, and stabbed. Theory takes brains, execution takes guts, and the rest, I grinned, is adrenaline. Tang Zheng was stunned. No formal training, just raw physical talent and sheer nerve. Yet, she had witnessed my explosive speed, power, and my uncanny ability to pinpoint weaknesses in the chaos. Her gaze deepened. Pure physical aptitude and combat instinct. That's rare. Her tone was thick with admiration for my strength. I joked, add project management to that. My current task is delivering you and these project deliverables. I gestured to the boar meat on the sled, back to headquarters. Tang Zheng's lips twitched upward briefly. Tang Zheng affinity, 25%, 42%. Tang Zheng affinity reached initial trust, greater than or equal to 30. Reward, 1 free attribute point. Finally, I opened my interface and added the point to strength. Strength, 9.5, 10.5. A surge of warmth flooded my limbs. The sled felt lighter, my muscles felt refined, and my grip on my spear tightened with newfound precision. Stamina, 68%, 75%. Partial recovery. By the way, I asked, what were the tracks you saw near Chinimo? 12 centimeters wide, 5 toes, clear claws, long stride, Tang Zheng recalled. Over 50 kilograms. Likely a tiger, given the size. A tiger, I mused. And the cub sounds. Faint, like a kitten. Distant or muffled, she confirmed. I noted this. After an hour, the rock cave came into view. I shouted toward the cave, Tian Tian, I'm back. After a brief silence, Lin Tiantian's excited voice rang out. Brother Yinfan? The barrier door swung open. Lin Tiantian rushed out, but stopped short upon seeing me covered in blood, dragging a sled, and accompanied by a tall, unfamiliar woman. Su Man emerged, leaning against the wall. Her eyes softened as she spotted the blood-stained, injured Tang Zheng. Miss Tang, she said gently, thank goodness you're safe. Please, come in. President Shun's voice echoed from within. Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng bowed her head. President Shun, I apologize for not finding you sooner. Survival is duty enough, Shun replied. Your injuries? Dislocated shoulder, I reset it. It's fine. I took charge. Tian Tian, store the meat. Su Man, boil water for cleaning wounds. I sat Tang Zheng by the fire to inspect her wounds. Her tactical vest and shirt were torn, and the mud-caked gashes needed thorough cleaning. Su Man brought hot water. I used clean cloth to wash the wounds with practiced, precise movements. Tang Zheng sat perfectly still, not making a sound even as the alcohol stung. Her eyes followed my every move. My cleaning, inspection, and application of crushed Campanumia lancifolia paste were professional. The cave buzzed with activity. Tian Tian moved meat, Su Man tended the fire, and Shun gave instructions. Tang Zheng watched me, smelling the mix of sweat, earth, and my reliable presence. As I bandaged her, she felt a sense of security. Tang Zheng affinity, 42%, 60%. Reached obedient reliance. Reward, 2 attribute points. Captain, she said naturally. I looked up. Tang Zheng's eyes were warm, devoid of battlefield coldness. If needed, I can lead the way to find Chun Mo once I've healed. I nodded. Once you can draw a bow again. Hardcore tip. The Hippocratic method for shoulder reduction uses the heel as a fulcrum in the axilla to leverage the joint back into place. Survival trivia. Philanthus emblica fruit contains 30 times the vitamin C of an orange and is heat-stable, making it excellent for preventing scurvy. The cave was dim, lit only by the dying embers of the fire. I woke to the warmth of Lin Tiantian curled against me, her arm draped over my waist. My body felt exceptionally energized. I sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and desire. My increased stats had heightened my morning impulses. Using my project manager willpower, I gently moved Tiantian's arm and sat up. I scanned the cave. President Shun lay nearby. Su Man rested against the wall, and Tang Zheng slept near the entrance. Tang Zheng's eyelashes fluttered, and she opened her eyes, instantly alert. Captain, she whispered, voice raspy. Shoulder pain is manageable. No fever. I nodded and checked her forehead, my interface appearing. Name, Tang Zheng. Status, conscious, shoulder dislocated / reset, soft tissue bruising, temp 36.8 degrees Celsius, no infection. Mood, alert / observant. Affinity, 60%. She closed her eyes again, but remained awake. Shun and Su Man stirred as well, acknowledging me with subtle movements. Stamina, 92%. Satiety, 88%. Hydration, 90%. Time to upgrade. I opened my panel and allocated 1 point to agility. Agility, 7.68.6. As I added the point, a microcurrent surged through my spine. My joint range remained the same, but my precision skyrocketed. My fingers now moved instantly upon thought, as if my neural transmission had upgraded from a highway to fiber optics. I added the second point to perception, 6.27.2, and the world sharpened. It wasn't just better vision. It was a flood of sensory data. I could distinguish the crackle of moisture in palm fronds from the brittle snap of Casuarina equisetifolia branches. I heard the drip of the rock cave's water source every 3 seconds. The air carried the damp earth, rotting vegetation, the faint blood scent of yesterday's pork, and Tang Zheng's unique lychee milk fragrance, now crisp and sweet. I allocated my skill point, range shooting LV.2.5 LV.3.5. Theoretical knowledge of ballistics flooded my mind. Where I once needed half a second to process the system's trajectory lines, my muscles now adjusted automatically to the optimal angle and release, embedding the muscle memory directly into my body. Captain, Tang Zheng watched me standing still. I'm fine, I replied, heading to the cave entrance. Time for the daily check. At dawn, I inspected the perimeter. The spear trap was intact, and one of the 4 snare traps on the west side had caught something. A brown flying squirrel, weighing about 1 kilogram, hung lifeless in the vine loop. Tang Zheng followed, her left arm still in a sling. I glanced at her. Don't move around if you aren't healed. I'm learning the route, she replied, eyeing the traps. The trigger line on the west side should be lowered 5 degrees to match the animal trail. I checked. She was right. I adjusted the vine line to 10 centimeters off the ground. Traps and stealth plus 0.1 LV.3.7. This sector is yours now, I said. Once you're healed, you're in charge of the defense system. Tang Zheng affinity, 60% 65%. Yes, Captain, she nodded, her eyes reflecting focused trust. Back at the cave, Lin Tiantian was fetching water, Su Man was tending the fire, and President Shun was meticulously organizing supplies, arranging the pottery and herbs with military precision. Brother Yinfan, you caught something. Lin Tiantian cheered. Extra food, I said, tossing the squirrel to the processing area before checking her haul. Lin Tiantian proudly presented 4 coconuts, 3 guavas, Burmese grapes, Costus speciosus, fern fronds, a piece of Ganoderma applanatum, insect-repellent herbs, and rattan. I inspected the fresh produce, noting the ripeness of the guavas and the quality of the ferns. My gaze shifted to the pottery. Beside the drying bowl and pot were new pieces, a thick-walled bowl, a ladle with a handle, and 2 small dishes. The ladle handle was slightly crooked, but the bowl and dishes were well-formed and crack-free. Su Man helped with the ladle handle using her left hand, and I shaped the rest, Lin Tiantian explained shyly. It's not perfect, Su Man added softly. I tested the ladle. The joint was sturdy. The bowl and dishes were smooth and uniform. They're excellent, I praised. Functionality is what matters. You've both improved. Both women smiled, clearly pleased. Before breakfast, I used my aluminum blade to pierce the softest eye of the coconuts. I gave the first coconut to President Shun, who shared it with Su Man, Lin Tiantian, and Tang Zheng. I drank from the second one. The cool water washed away their morning fatigue. Merged with 1855. Using a flat sandstone as a stone axe, I carefully split 2 coconuts into perfect hemispheres. Craftsmanship plus 0.1 LV.6.4. I scraped out the meat, slicing it to dry by the fire as a source of fat and energy. I charred the inner shells over the fire to sanitize them, then polished the edges with sandstone to create smooth bowls. For the remaining 2 coconuts, I drained the juice and chopped the meat for their soup, instructing Lin Tiantian to prepare it. I carved 2 conical corks from dry twigs to seal the remaining shells as canteens. I wove rattan nets around the shells to create carrying straps. These aren't perfectly airtight, I warned, but they're fine for short-term transport. Transporting what? Lin Tiantian asked. Seawater, I said, grabbing my gear. For salt and soap making. Tangzheng, come with me. Tangzheng stood up immediately. They trekked toward the beach, both instinctively choosing the firmest ground to avoid the damp undergrowth. I pointed out resources, cattails for weaving, wild bananas for water, and warned her to avoid the edges of leaf piles where Hamadipsa spp. Might hide. Tangzheng listened, noting my instructions with professional brevity. At the reef, I filled the canteens with seawater. They leaked slightly, but were sufficient for the task. We need salt for curing meat and alkali for soap, I explained. Don't drink this. On the return, my heightened perception caught a distant rustle, birds taking flight hundreds of meters away. The system radar showed nothing, but I noted the anomaly. By 9 a.m., they returned to find a hearty soup of jerky, ferns, guava, and coconut ready. President Shun had arranged the meal with her usual exactitude. Let's eat, I said. As they sat, I noticed Suman's difficulty. I scooped a bowl of soup, tested the heat, and naturally fed her a spoonful. Suman blushed but accepted it, whispering a soft, thank you. Affinity, Suman 76% 78%. I steadied the bowl for Shun Qingqiu, whose left hand trembled. She glanced at me, a faint smile touching her lips as she drank. Affinity, Shun Qingqiu 50% 51%. Lin Tiantian fed me a piece of tender venison, which I ate. Tangzheng ate efficiently with one hand. I placed meat in her bowl, urging her to eat for tissue repair. Tangzheng nodded. Yes, Captain. Affinity, Tangzheng 65% 66%. Post-meal care began. I cleaned Shin Qingqiu's healing leg wound with boiled water, applied a poultice of Campanumia lancifolia and Perosia lingua, and rebandaged it. As my fingers brushed her skin, Shin Qingqiu stiffened, her breathing quickening. She looked away, her ears flushing red. I massaged Su Man's injured arm to prevent stiffness. She complied submissively, thanking me with a honeyed gaze. Affinity, Su Man 76% 80%. For Tangzheng, I applied a mixture of Ganoderma applanatum powder and herbal paste to her shoulder. Tightening the splint caused her to break into a cold sweat. Her scent, a blend of lychee and milk, lingered, distracting me. I wiped her brow, telling her to endure the recovery process. Tangzheng flushed, replying softly, Affinity, Tangzheng 66% 71%. Lin Tiantian, having only minor scratches, used the checkup as an excuse to nuzzle my palm like a cat. At 10:30, pork processing began. I diluted seawater with fresh water to a 0.7% salinity, creating an ideal brine that preserves meat without dehydrating it or making it overly salty. I sliced the pork, washed it in the brine, and left it to drain. I prepared a marinade, crushed Philanthus emblica, preservative, mint, antibacterial, cattail juice, for the Maillard reaction, and Mamortica cochinchonensis pulp, thickener. It's like a spa for the meat, I remarked, rubbing the marinade thoroughly into the strips. I scraped fat from the pigskin using an aluminum blade, noting that lard oxidizes quickly and must be used or stored immediately. The heart and liver were set aside for lunch. The rest was processed. I built an A-frame smoking rack from Y-shaped branches and hardwood, hanging the meat strips on vine cords. I selected fuel, Diera castellata, sweet smoke, camphor leaves, antibacterial, and an artemisia-like herb aroma. At 11:30, I started a smoldering fire in a pit beneath the rack, covering the fuel with damp leaves to produce thick smoke without flames. Su Man and Lin Tiantian managed the smoke levels to ensure consistent curing. Cooking proficiency plus 0.3 LV.2.3. Craftsmanship plus 0.1 LV.6.7. Lunch consisted of grilled wild boar heart and liver, blanched Pteridium aquilinum, and Bocoria ramiflora for dessert. I gave Tangzheng the organ meat, noting its high iron and B12 content for her recovery. Tangzheng ate with the focused intensity of a large feline. I offered Shin Qingqiu a skewer, teasingly calling it Wilderness Michelin. Shin Qingqiu tasted it critically, noting the liver was slightly dry but praising the acidity of the Philanthus emblica. Lin Tian hovered by me, happily accepting my food and eyeing my portion. I announced the afternoon plan. Su Man would monitor the smoking, while I and Lin Tian would fire pottery. I added that I intended to use the lard and wood ash to create primitive soap for better hygiene. Lin Tian cheered at the prospect of cleaner baths. Su Man agreed, and Shun Qingqiu, ever fastidious, showed keen interest. Tang Zheng questioned the technical feasibility of the saponification process. I explained the difference between simple surfactant-based plants like soapberry and the more durable, saponified soap made from lard and ash. After lunch, the group rested. Feeling competitive, Lin Tian clung to my arm, complaining of the cold to stay close. I patted her back, telling her to sleep before the afternoon's labor. The other women watched. Su Man and Shun Qingqiu rested quietly, while Tang Zheng observed the pair with unreadable eyes before closing them. The cave grew quiet, filled only with the crackle of the fire and the scent of smoke. Hardcore tips. Low-temperature smoke, 60 to 80 degrees Celsius, is essential for curing. High flames char the exterior while leaving the interior raw and prone to rot. Survival trivia. Of the 3 eyes on a coconut, only one is soft. Identifying it saves 80% of the effort required to open it. Time passed in the cave to the rhythm of the fire. I woke to find Lin Tian still curled against me, her breathing steady. I playfully patted her, calling her a lazy cat to wake her. Lin Tian stirred, smiling when she saw me, and lingered in my embrace before letting go. Shin Qingqiu was tidying her clothes, Su Man was checking the fire, and Tang Zheng opened her eyes the moment I moved. "Captain," Tang Zheng acknowledged. I headed toward the pottery corner. The clay bowl and pot were dry, ringing clearly when tapped, indicating they were ready for firing. The system interface confirmed the status. Bowl/pot, air-dried, less than 5% moisture, kaolin clay with quartz sand. Recommendation: open pit firing at 800 to 900 degrees Celsius using dry hardwood and palm leaves for insulation. Pot, air-dried, less than 5% moisture, material matches bowl. System suggestion: treat as ceramic bowl blanks. The thicker pot requires extending high-temperature firing to over 1.5 hours. The newly crafted deep bowls, soup spoons, and small dishes remain covered in damp cloth, needing 2 to 3 days to air dry. I turned to Lin Tian. Collect dry hardwoods like gutta percha or casuarina equisetifolia branches, plus some palm leaves. Lin Tian jumped up, dusting off her pants. Gutta percha trees, common in Southeast Asian rainforests, provide the dense hardwood needed for fuel. I directed Tang Zheng to clear a 60 centimeters wide, 10 centimeters deep pit downwind, 8 meters from the cave. Su Man volunteered to monitor the smoke fire. President Shin observed silently. Their island, located in the equatorial Pacific, was a dense, humid green hell typical of the Indo-Malayan rainforest. Tang Zheng cleared the site with his spear. Despite his injured left shoulder, his core strength and right arm allowed him to dig a perfectly circular pit. Lin Tian brought the dense gutta percha branches. I used my aluminum blade to trim them to uniform sizes. I carved an icon of a bowl and the label 01 into the bottoms of the clay blanks for identification. Lin Tian crouched nearby, curious about the markings. "It's a primitive KPI assessment," I explained. "We need to track who made what and how it fired to improve our results for the client." President Shin's lips quirked slightly at the comment as the pile firing began. I arranged the wood in a grid over the pit, placing the bowls and pot upside down to ensure even heat distribution. I stacked the wood into a 40 centimeters cone, covering it with palm leaves to act as insulation. A classic, primitive pottery technique. The fire was lit, creeping up the wood and charring the palm leaves. System data updated. Core temperature: 200 degrees Celsius, 350 degrees Celsius, 500 degrees Celsius. Smoke escaped the leaves, carrying the sweet, charred scent of gutta percha. I used my spear to adjust the wood for better airflow. "The silicates in the clay will vitrify," I explained, treating the task like a project meeting. "It'll become waterproof ceramic." Tang Zheng watched the flames intently, asking, "What if the temperature is too low?" It'll be like underbaked cookies, I replied, adjusting the pile. Hard outside, but powdery inside. It'll dissolve in water. Core temperature, 650 degrees Celsius, 780 degrees Celsius, 850 degrees Celsius. The temperature stabilized at 850 degrees Celsius. System, effective sintering temperature reached, maintained for 1.5 hours. The clay turned from earthy yellow to glowing orange-red. I wiped sweat from my brow. A sudden gust of wind swept through the forest. The flames shifted, causing a dangerous temperature spike on one side of the pot. System warning. Local overheating. High risk of cracking. I acted instantly, using my spear to shift the burning wood and slapping a handful of wet mud onto the side of the pile to act as a heat shield. The mud hissed and steamed, neutralizing the risk within 10 seconds. President Shin watched, noting my skilled, practiced movements with rare approval. It's just like handling client revisions. I laughed, wiping off the mud. Only instead of burning brain cells, I'm burning wood. Craftsmanship proficiency, plus 0.3 LV.7.0. Time passed slowly. I took a brief break to use the designated cat hole latrine. Returning, I handed Lin Tian a large wild fig leaf. Princess Tian, add this to your KPI. Keep our 5-star restroom stocked with these natural paper substitutes. Lin Tian blushed, clutching the leaf and whispering, I know. You're so annoying, brother Yunfan. I maintained the fire every 20 minutes. Lin Tian hauled wood, while Tangjung stood guard like a rigid spear. After 90 minutes, the fire burned out. I carefully extracted the glowing red pottery from the embers, placing them on dry sand. They had to cool naturally to avoid cracking. While waiting, I turned to the soap-making process. I filtered wood ash through a cloth strip to obtain a fine powder, then mixed it with warm water. System analysis. Leachate, potassium carbonate, trace sodium carbonate / potassium chloride. pH, 10.6. Evaluation, weak alkali, suitable for saponification. We're mixing lard with potassium carbonate to create potassium soap, I explained. It's a better degreaser than plain water. Lin Tian asked if it was the same as regular soap. The principle is the same, but our alkali is weak, so it'll take time, I said, stirring the mixture. We need stronger sources like salicornia or niter for hard soap. I melted the lard over hot water and slowly added the lye, beginning a long, patient stirring process. I added cattail juice for scent and a spoonful of GAC fruit pulp for natural orange-red pigment. I placed the bowl near the fire to maintain a constant, warm temperature. This is our new public KPI, I announced. Tian leads, the others assist. Stir 3 times a day, 5 minutes each. The women agreed. Persistence is key, I added. Even if it doesn't harden, the mixture will still be an effective cleaner. Cooking proficiency plus 0.2 LV.2.5. The pottery had finished cooling. I inspected the bowl. It was light, with a textured surface where quartz particles had fused. A tap produced a crisp, porcelain-like sound. The pot was thicker with slight heat distortion marks, but it was solid. I poured water inside. There was no leakage. Milestone reached, pottery firing successful. Reward, skill point +1, total, 2. I scooped water into my new clay bowl. The group watched in silence as the water shimmered under the cave light. After a minute, I inspected the bowl. No seepage, no moisture on the stone. It was perfectly sealed. I took a sip. The spring water tasted distinct from the handmade vessel. Excellent seal and sintering, I said with a satisfied smile. Tangjung, help me check the traps. At dusk, I grabbed my bow and spear. Tangjung followed, her movements agile despite her arm sling. The alarm system was intact. The snare trap was empty, and the spike trap remained perfectly set. Passing a guava bush, I identified ripe fruit via the system. System, guava, ripe. Edible, rich in vitamin C and fiber. Recommended for hydration and energy. I picked 2, eating one and handing the other to Tangjung. Tangjung took a bite, juice spilling slightly. She licked it away, her usually cold expression softening. I caught her faint, milky lychee scent. I swallowed hard, looked away, and gathered more fruit. Back at the smoking rack, Su Man was tending the fire. The meat had turned a deep, dry, reddish-brown after 6 hours. Suman reported steady smoke levels. I checked the meat. 2 more hours, then we eat. I tended to President Shin's leg. The wound was healing well, with healthy pink tissue forming. I cleaned it and applied a fresh poultice of Campanumia lancifolia and Ganoderma applanatum powder. My touch was professional and gentle. Shun felt the warmth of my fingers, her body tensing slightly as her ears turned pink. I then massaged Suman's fingers, carefully working the joints. Suman watched me, her eyes soft. Finally, I checked Tang Zheng's shoulder. The swelling had subsided, and the scent of lychee milk lingered around her. Recovery is good, I noted. You can try light movement tomorrow. Yes, Captain, she replied. Dinner was served in the new pottery. The meal featured smoked boar liver, jerky, ferns, and a steaming pot of coconut soup. I handed a bowl of soup to Suman. Try our first creation. Suman held the bowl. It was light and heat-resistant. It works perfectly, she said, steam obscuring her eyes. Lin Tian reached for the jerky with her hands, but I tapped her knuckles with my chopsticks. Use your utensils, little savage. She pouted but complied. I gave Tang Zheng the largest piece of liver. For your blood. President Shin ate slowly. The smoke is balanced, and the Philanthus emblica cuts the grease well. The cave grew quiet after the meal. Firelight danced on the walls. Lin Tian sat by me, staring into the flames. Suddenly, her shoulders trembled. I looked over. Her eyes were red, fighting back tears. Brother Yunfan. She sniffled. I miss home. The others grew somber. Suman looked down. Shin stared into the darkness, and Tang Zheng gripped her hands. I miss my parents, my dorm, everything. Lin Tian sobbed. Are we ever going back? I pulled her into a hug, letting her cry into my chest. I patted her back steadily. Crying is fine. Holding it in is harder. I looked at the others. They were all visibly struggling. I know you all have lives waiting for you, I said. Shen has her company. Suman has her flights. Tian has her studies. And Tang Zheng. I paused with a self-deprecating laugh. I have nothing. Maybe this island is a fresh start for me. But you all have reasons to return. Shin asked anxiously. When will rescue come? Should we make a bigger signal? I shook my head. A random SOS is useless. The canopy is too thick. I sketched on the ground, explaining that from the air, the jungle just looks like a green blanket. We need high contrast, dark rocks on white sand or cleared patches of earth. I looked at them intently. Tomorrow, Tian and I will build a 20-meter SOS on the beach. Also, we must find Technician Shun. Every day counts. Silence filled the cave, save for the crackling fire. Suman noted that search operations usually last 30 days. It had only been 7. That assumes they're looking in the right place, I countered. We're off course and off map. Tang Zheng added coldly, don't count on luck. We have to prove we're alive, or we'll just be names on a list. No one argued. I stood up. I'll take the first watch. Tang Zheng, the second. The others lay down, though they remained tense. Lin Tian clung to my sleeve. I sat by the fire, spear in hand. I checked the system interface. My radar map showed my teammates as green dots within a 100-meter radius. The night deepened. The jungle was filled with eerie cries and the rustle of small animals. Suddenly, a green dot flickered 80 meters to the northwest. It lasted 2 seconds, then vanished. System, life signal detected. Category, human. Status, unknown. Strength, extremely weak. My pupils constricted. I gripped my spear, knuckles white. Technician Shun? Was she alive? 80 meters away, but the night jungle was a death trap of snakes and predators. My reason screamed that moving now was too risky for the group. I stared at the spot on the map, now blank again. I exhaled slowly, loosening my grip on the spear, then tightening it again. I stayed put, but sleep would not come. Hardcore tips. When firing pottery in an open pit, the clay must be completely air-dried, moisture content less than 5%, to prevent explosive shattering caused by rapid steam expansion. Survival trivia. Wood ash leachate contains potassium carbonate. When reacted with fats via saponification, it produces potassium soap, soft soap, which is an effective degreaser but difficult to solidify into bars. I opened my eyes as the cave light shifted from dark to gray. Lin Tian's warm breath brushed my neck. I gently withdrew my arm and sat up. Tang Zheng awoke simultaneously, her eyes sharp. I nodded at her. They exited the cave into dense morning mist. The tropical humidity was near saturation, instantly coating their skin in fine droplets. I inspected the perimeter. The tripwire alarms and vine markers were intact. The eastern spear trap was set, but the western snare traps were empty. The system radar map showed only small animals nearby. The green dot from last night had vanished. Back inside, the women were awake. Lin Tian carefully ladled water from the rock crevice. Su Man tended the fire, heating the stainless steel spice tin. President Shen sat against the wall, massaging her injured ankle. "How is it?" I asked. "I can move it," Shen replied, her voice raspy. "But it still hurts." I unwrapped her dressing. The wound was healing well, with new tissue forming. I cleaned it and applied a fresh Campanumia lancifolia poultice. "In 3 days, you should be able to take a few steps." Shen watched my professional, steady hands, reminded of a high-paid therapist from her past. Su Man's arm splint was secure. She reached out, her fingers curling against my palm as I massaged them. "It feels better," she said. "Don't strain it," I warned. "Bone fractures take at least 4 weeks." Tang Zheng's shoulder swelling had subsided. As I checked the bindings, Tang tensed, not from pain, but from the electric sensation of my touch. "You can move it slightly now," I instructed. 3 passive sessions daily, 5 minutes each. Do not use your own strength. "Yes, Captain." During breakfast, I checked the potassium soap mixture in the corner. The mixture had turned dark brown and thickened, though it was far from solidifying. Tian, here is your KPI," I said, handing her a bamboo stick. "Stir for 5 minutes, 3 times a day, to maintain temperature." Lin Tian nodded earnestly. Task accepted. I stood at the cave entrance, facing the group. "I have a strong intuition," I said gravely. "Chen Mo is nearby and dangerous. We can't wait any longer." The cave fell silent. "We split up," I ordered. "Tang Zheng, take Tian to the beach. Build a 20-meter SOS sign using dark stones on the sand. Watch the tide." Tang Zheng acknowledged. "I'll track Chen Mo alone. It's faster and quieter." Shen bit her lip but stayed silent. "You two stay here," I told Shen and Su Man, "tend the fire and the soap." "President Shen, you are in charge of the soap KPI." Shen nodded. Lin Tian looked up at me. "Be careful, Brother Yunfan." "You too," I replied, ruffling her hair before gearing up. I equipped my bow, bamboo arrows, spear, and aluminum blade, packing rations and medicinal herbs. I filled my canteen and left. "Captain, be careful," Tang Zheng called out. I waved without looking back, disappearing into the mist. My movement was silent. With strength 10.5, agility 8.6, constitution 8.0, and perception 7.2, I navigated the jungle with superhuman efficiency. I detected every sound and movement within a 50-meter radius. This was the result of my attribute upgrades. System: stamina, 85%. I paused by a tree to eat some ripe guava. System: guava, ripe. Edible, rich in vitamin C. Recommended. Consume to restore hydration and energy. I ate 3, boosting my satiety to 92% and hydration to 96%. I pressed on. I found Costus speciosus roots, known for anti-inflammatory properties, and packed them away. System: Costus speciosus rhizome. Medicinal, analgesic, and anti-inflammatory. I ignored other forage, my goal clear. The radar map showed no significant threats. I approached the target area. I lowered my center of gravity, spear ready, moving with extreme caution. I spotted them. In the soft mud, I found footprints, narrow, 21 centimeters long, with a distinct arch. A woman's footprints. They were hours old, leading deeper into the jungle. "Chen Mo," I whispered. Tracking the prints, my radar map flickered. A green dot and a faint red dot overlapped ahead. I accelerated. Pushing through a wall of thorny vines, I stopped dead. A small plane wreck was wedged between the trees. The metal was rusted and covered in mold, indicating a recent crash accelerated by the tropical environment. Beside the wreckage sat a twisted, large metal cage. I approached. The high-strength aluminum cage had been forced open from the inside. System: item, high-strength aluminum transport cage. Visible text, live cargo. Private. Analysis, used for large animal transport, severely damaged. Massive claw marks were dragged into the mud around the cage. Rare animal smuggling. My internal alarm bells rang. I recalled Tang Zheng's mention of tiger-like paw prints, the system's brief life signal detection, and signs of large felines near Technician Chin's last known location. The target was ahead. Holding my breath, I followed the radar's guidance. Pushing through hanging vines, I discovered a natural rock cave partially obscured by vegetation. A weak, wheezing growl emanated from within, sounding like air forced through a broken bellows. Stopping meters away, I called out steadily, "Technician Chen? It's Li Yunfan, from your flight." Silence followed, save for the animal's faint growl. A trembling, terrified female voice replied, "It's me, Chinemo. You can come in. I don't think it will attack anymore." Gripping my spear, I stepped inside. Light filtered through the entrance, illuminating dancing dust motes like gold powder. I took in the scene. A massive, snow-white jaguar lay on its side, breathing shallowly. Its head and abdomen bore gruesome, infected wounds, deep enough to expose bone. System insight: Jaguar, Panthera onca, albino mutation, adult female. Status: dying, severe infection, multi-organ failure. Note: species native to the Americas, likely an escaped transport animal. Beside the mother, a cat-sized white cub nuzzled her chin, whimpering. System insight: Jaguar cub, albino, 3 months, 8 kilograms, healthy, mild malnutrition. Near the entrance, a thin girl in a baggy hoodie sat against the rock wall. It was Chinemo. Her hair was matted, glasses askew, and her eyes were unfocused from fever. Her arms and legs were scratched, and 3 bloated land leeches clung to her left calf. System insight: name, Chun Mo, status, dehydrated, starving, satiety less than 30%, low fever, 37.8 degrees Celsius, contusions, leech infestation. Mood: fear, relief, weakness. Affinity: 5%. Physical: stressed, low immunity. Seeing me, Chun Mo burst into tears, struggling to speak. The big one. It came back last night. Collapsed there. The cub has been following me. She gasped. I found it in a crevice days ago, starving. There was blood and signs of a fight. I was scared and ran, then fell and got hurt. Looking at the leeches, she whispered, "The mother didn't chase me. I worried about the cub, came back, and it tugged my pants to lead me here." I understood. Chun Mo had survived alone, cared for the cub, and was led to the dying mother by the cub itself. "You're safe now," I said, stepping forward. I checked her forehead, burning. System: temperature, 37.9 degrees Celsius. Let's deal with these leeches. I drew my aluminum blade. I tapped the skin around the leeches to make them detach naturally, avoiding leaving their mouthparts behind. I rinsed the wounds with water, then applied crushed Campanumia lancifolia as a poultice. Chun Mo winced, but remained silent. "Bear with it," I said, treating her other scratches. "We must prevent infection." I fed her water in small sips. She drank, sighing in relief, then chewed a piece of smoked meat I offered, her eyes clearing slightly. "How have you been surviving?" I asked while applying Perosia lingua to her arm. "Wild fruits, a creek nearby." I made a snare with vines and caught a rodent-like creature to feed the cub. As she looked at the cub, the system pinged. Affinity plus 25, total 30%. Milestone, initial trust. Reward, 1 free attribute point. I ignored the point for now and checked the mother. Her eyes were glazed, breathing stopped. System: status, dead. "It's gone," I murmured. The cub whimpered, nudging its mother's still body. I offered the cub a strip of smoked meat. The cub sniffed it, then ate ravenously. I assessed the situation. Chun Mo needed immediate medical care, and the scent of the carcass would soon attract predators. "We must leave immediately," I declared. Chun Mo nodded weakly. "I can't walk." "I'll carry you," I replied. Using my LV.7.0 craftsmanship, I quickly fashioned a sturdy stretcher from vines and branches. The knots were tight and efficient, completed in under 3 minutes. "Get on." I helped the frail girl onto the stretcher and secured her to my back. She weighed less than 40 kilograms. Hold tight. I balanced the load, spear in one hand. Let's go. I glanced back at the white jaguar, now a silent statue, and the whimpering cub. I whistled. The cub looked up, confused. Follow, I commanded. The cub trotted after me, looking back at its mother one last time. They moved 50 meters into the open forest. Carrying Chun Mo was manageable for my 10.5 strength, but the slippery terrain required extreme caution. System: stamina, 70%. I stopped to rest, sharing water and a fruit with Chun Mo eat. Chun Mo nibbled the fruit, juice trickling down her chin. Dazed, she leaned her head against my shoulder, her breath warming my neck. The white tiger cub followed closely, stumbling over the rough terrain but refusing to fall behind. My enhanced perception, 7.2, made me hyper-aware of my surroundings. I suddenly froze. A faint, musky scent, distinct from the damp rainforest, drifted by. While imperceptible to most, my heightened senses caught it instantly. On my radar map, a red dot approached rapidly from behind. I spun around. Through the trees, I spotted a sturdy, dark-furred beast with a signature U-shaped chest marking. It was sniffing the ground, heading toward the tiger den, clearly drawn by the scent of blood. Then, it hesitated. It lifted its head, nostrils twitching, before locking its gaze onto me. System identification flashed. Sun bear, Helarctos malayanus, adult. Stats: 1.2 m long, 60 kilograms. Traits: omnivorous, aggressive, skilled climber. Status: healthy, attracted by blood. The bear's eyes remained fixed on them. I tensed. I lowered my body, aimed my spear, and gently tapped the semi-conscious Chun Mo. Don't make a sound. Hold on tight. The white tiger cub bristled, hiding behind my leg and letting out a tiny, instinctive growl. The sun bear stared, pawing at the dirt. It seemed to be weighing its options, the easy carrion at the tiger den or the living prey before it. Every second felt like an eternity. Then, the bear took a step toward them.